welcome everybody to MogTalk. If you guys are unfamiliar with MogTalk, it's a show based around the Final Fantasy XIV community, discussing everything about Savage raiding to Chocobo racing. And we have a whole bunch of amazing guests on the show, and I'm not going to delay it too much. We're going to be talking about the live letter that happened recently that went over a lot of job actions and teeth. First, let me have our guests tell you who they are, though. Momo, could you go first and have everyone know who you are?
Yeah, my name's FFXIV Momo. I'm a Final Fantasy XIV based content creator, mainly focusing on healers, but we play a little bit of everything.
Okay. Sindalf?
I'm Sindalf. I've basically been playing since Realm Reborn, mainly tanks. The main thing that I mainly do in this game is I do world prog, world racing, all of that.
Yeah.
So my perspective is kind of from that side of things.
And piss off the community.
Yeah, unintentionally.
Okay, alright, good. Alright, Chile.
Hello, I'm Chile. I just played the video game and talk a lot on Twitter, probably a bit too much.
Okay.
Yeah.
You like poop hats too, right?
I do, yeah. I walk around with poop hats at FanFest most of the time.
Okay. Just making sure I had all the pieces aligned there. Guys, today we're going to be having a fairly interesting conversation, I think, because there's a lot of opinions out there. I feel like this happens every single expansion. I've been like a decade of this, and there's always these just like conflicting and over emotional responses to video game changes. Some people think the whole game's over. Some people think it's perfectly fine. Real quick, where do you guys stand? Is the game over?
Yeah, no, it's done. Like, this is the last expansion. There's no coming back from it. Like, everybody just needs to move on. Maybe play World of Warcraft or something and find something new.
Yeah. Okay. Sindalf, same.
I will say that at least with most that I've heard, a lot of people are kind of disappointed, partly because they expected a little bit more from it.
Okay.
But for me personally, I'm more in that acceptance category where it's like, none of this really surprised me too much, because this is sort of where the game's been heading for a long time. And they've already said, we're not going back to Heaven's Ward and Stormblood. And I also don't think SC's up to the task of changing the jobs to be really complex, more interesting the way they were in the past, while also changing some of the raid design to be a little more difficult, or just different in that regard. Because if you've played for a long time, you might notice that these things do go. Well, it's not that. It's like they're. Okay. I mean, some people are, because we've tasted what it's like to have really good and interesting classes, in a way, and then they kind of took that away. But having a harder class in many ways affects every aspect of the game. And so if they make things a little too difficult, or they make things too dynamic in that regard, then that will positively or negatively affect every piece of content they release from here on out, which may not go over well. And I don't think they're up to that challenge just yet of making that change, on top of also trying to make things like smaller hitboxes.
Just in case I missed it, that change is what? The more difficult job design, or?
It more something that isn't as straightforward, and you're playing the class the way Square Enix want you to. I think we'll probably get a lot more into that when we start talking about Monk, because Monk is probably. Man, that's one I think a lot of people
everyone
are not very
wants to talk about Monk. We'll get to Monk. Don't worry. Trust me. That's something I want to talk about too, because we literally fucking talked about Monk, and the exact shit I complained about got axed. So it's great. All right. Chili, how do you feel about the game right now after that trailer and the live letter?
I don't know how I feel right now, because I feel like we do need some more difficult content because of the push for single player content with the trust system and duty support. But I don't know if, when people talk about making dungeons harder, I like the idea in a way, but then I also disliked it because the fact that it's something you just do daily for tomes. It's something I don't really want it to be. Oh God, I have to actually put effort into it. But I am excited to see what they change for raiding.
Don't trigger me with these opinions, man. Like, you guys, we're going to start up a whole nother conversation that I'm already itching to talk about. But yeah. Yeah. Well, no, literally the harder dungeon conversation. The whole thing about like dungeons are so hard. The more difficult thing is pulling wall to wall and people using their cooldowns. That's supposed to be the slight challenge of it, is speedily doing the dungeon, but people fight that, you know, other people trying to fuck it. You know what? We're not doing it. We're going to talk about something else. All right. You know, for the start of this show, you know what I want to talk about? I want to talk about the teeth that are in the game. And how, you know, you guys were going to come to this show and thought, oh, fuck, they're going to talk about all the job changes. You know, let's surprise you. And for the first 30 minutes, let's just talk about the teeth. And I see what you guys think about that. How'd you guys feel about the teeth in the presentation?
I'll be honest, I was worried that you just put teeth in the document because you got a British person on. I'm like, wait, what? Is this
yeah, good point. Yeah. That's actually really good.
There was no reference to anything, just teeth. I'm like, wait, what?
I mean, it was just so like weird. That was something that they should have addressed, right? At some point, they should have addressed that. But I didn't think that they would do it right at the beginning of the broadcast and just sit on it for a while. Like, the community must have been so upset about the teeth. I mean, some of it did look a little bit weird. All right. That's fair. The fangs, I didn't care at all, but I don't play Makote, so
people care more about their in-game teeth than their IRL ones. It's crazy.
That's fucking true. That's probably true.
They didn't really have another place where they were going to put this information, so they had to put it somewhere
at the end of the broadcast.
They could have, yeah. And I think that probably would have been better,
right?
Well, I mean,
what next one?
There is one more live letter coming up.
Oh, is there?
But it was something that like they could have done that day, just not like everybody's just sitting there just so amped to, it's like 20, 30,000 people watching the channel, right? Just waiting to hear these changes, and then they just go into, we all felt a little bit baited for a second. I don't know. It wasn't that big of a deal. It surprised me. And he did address the DDoS stuff too, which needed to be addressed.
I actually think they shouldn't have addressed that.
Really? Why not?
Because then they sit there and they talk about how, oh, we have this great team that's going to find a way to figure it out, which is great. But the thing is that you're dealing with someone who's trying to ruin things for other people's enjoyment, for their own personal thing. And to me, I sit there and I'm like, if I was in that person's shoes who was actually like paying the money to do the DDoS, I'd be like, that's kind of like a challenge.
Oh, you think they're like, oh yeah, we people?
No, well, it's like in a way that's saying, oh, we'll take care of it, we'll figure it out, and then that person goes like, all right, bet, we'll see if you can do it, and then he amps it up, puts more money into it.
God, I hope that's not the case, because that sucks so bad. I mean, I don't know all the back end and how much it costs to DDoS. I mean, I assume there's a decent amount of funding that has to go into it, right? You have to pay the people who hacked other people's computers or something, right? I don't know.
It's probably going to be cheaper once like the expansion comes out as well, because everyone's going to be logging in at the same time anyway, causing like the natural version of DDoS without him actually having to do it. He's just going to be adding on to whatever they do.
Yeah. Well, after all that was done, we actually got into some changes, and the job action trailer wasn't in order there, but they did go in order on the broadcast. The new jobs, they kind of put them at the end of discussing the different roles and everything, but I want to do it a little bit differently. I mean, the thing that a lot of people wanted to see too, they wanted to see their jobs, updated, right? They wanted to see what they were changing with it, but they also wanted to learn more about Viper and Picto, right? And so Viper and Picto, we assume, is the current ideal job setup that they would be going for, what they think a good job is what I would assume, right? With all the stuff they've learned over the last 10 years, this is the culmination of it. What did you guys think about, let's just say, Viper? I mean, Chile, obviously, I think you like Viper, from what I can see.
I'm more of a Pictomancer guy myself.
Really? Okay. I got the wrong fucking
Yeah.
picture then.
Yeah, I love Reaper. Honestly, it looks really good.
Reaper? It does
Yeah,
look like
looks
it looks like
looks
Reaper,
awesome.
Gunbreaker, Dancer, right?
It looks like Reaper. It looks like a Ninja Reaper.
Ninja Reaper. Okay.
I mean,
okay.
really, honestly speaking, I mean, it looks fine. It looks like it kind of panders to the audience that likes the more
That would
fast-paced
like,
jobs.
they like Sword Art Online?
No, like seriously. I mean, it's fast-paced. It looks cool. It's flashy. I mean, kind of doesn't look like kind of reminds me of like more of like a Black Desert Online kind of job more than anything.
Okay.
Very flashy.
It looks
I
like.
think-
Go ahead.
I think it's great that they're adding a more fast-paced job like that.
It
Yeah.
looks
Because
fast.
there is it probably will feel that way, at least with the GCDs in the end. Because one of the big complaints a lot of people have with 14 is that it's slow. Although I think those people are a little misinformed because all
No.
GCDs and all that stuff. But
Mhm.
it is still at the end of the day a much slower game. But adding classes like Viper, which can be fast paced, Monk, which also can be, if that's something you're into, it feels really good.
Yeah.
But Viper itself was, at least for me, a little hard to follow. You press one button and like 4 things light up. And until we have tooltips, it's a little hard to like glean what the meaning is from all of that and what your
Mhm.
options are.
Yeah.
Because that, I think, is really what's going to make the class shine in the end. Is like how that all fits together. And we really can't tell that until we get our hands on it.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of agree with you too. Like, it looked really confusing. I like that he weaved 3 OGCDs in between 2 GCDs. And I'm like, that's pretty good. Wish I could do that. But that, you know, the appearance of it, I think, looks faster than the actual actions of the job. But maybe I'm wrong. I mean, the only thing that could make it really
I don't
fast
know.
paced is lowering the overall GCD and making a lot of OGCDs that you have to press on a normal basis, right?
I thought it makes its during its whatever its shroud move is called. I can't remember what should have been called trance, in my opinion, because that would have been cooler. I think it makes it 1.5 second GCD, right? When it's in like its
Yeah, I'm
ability.
pretty sure it's a 1-for-1 for Reapers and Shroud, pretty much.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say I don't like that change when I hear stuff like that with classes where it just becomes a 1.5 GCD because it starts to
yeah.
invalidate the need for skill speed. You just don't gain anything from it, which will ruin some of its own itemization at the end of the day.
I don't know if it's like it might be. I mean, it could be like affected by skill speed. Like
It could
I don't
be.
know about that.
I mean, like, skill speed and spell speed both, the only reason you add them is to make all your OGCD, or your GCDs line up with your cooldowns, right? And all that stuff to fucking just be able to feel cozy. Isn't that the only reason? Like, you find the perfect number and that's it? So you'd probably just find a number that feels kind of comfortable in Viper and that's it too, yeah?
Yes and no. They're depending on the fights that you're doing and the your job and your kit and how much like you have to pull off, go back to the boss. And if you're dealing with timers instead of stacks, more skill speed can actually be beneficial for making your execution a lot more consistent
Okay.
versus rigid. And I think we might see a small return of skill speed, but we'll get to that later with some of the other classes.
Sure. Well, I'm excited
well,
for
I'm
it
gonna
either way. Go ahead.
Sorry. All I'm gonna say is Reaper has a cool ability to effect on it. Dragoon has its cool effect on it. Viper has its cool effect on it. I want my Grease Lightning effect back on Monk, please. I missed the cool sparks. that was one of my reasons for playing Monk. Damn it.
Man, I'm
I
gonna
want my
let you
spark.
know. Like, I mean, that's really cool for the personal stuff, but I have literally all fucking animations turned off outside of my own animations because I can't see
Oh, same.
anything.
But if I'm
Same.
playing Monk, I want to see it.
So, yeah, it's and people, I think, talking about Picto, people were a little, and there's a handful of people who are like, this doesn't look serious enough for my game, right? This looks a little too goofy.
It's like one guy.
Yeah, but it only looks goofy to the person playing it unless if you have all the animations turned on, and you won't be able to see those animations anyways because it's jammed in with all the other ones. But yeah, speaking of Picto, I am stupidly excited for it. Like, it's not like I feel like this is the best job in the world. I just look at it and I'm like, I'd like to play this job.
Yeah, it looks fun.
Yeah.
Looks cool. I think it looks interesting.
Yeah. I mean, you're building these. It looks like. Let me make sure I understand it right. You got 3 pallets. You have one that has 1 stack. That's your 2-minute, right? Then you have the other one with 2 stacks, which is so landscape is the 2-minute. It looks like that has the big special thing where it has a circle. Everyone has to stand in it, right?
Yeah. I saw the hammer one, which was the 2-stack one.
Yeah, the hammer was the 2-stack, but that goes into 2 minutes, I'm guessing, anyways, right? Because it's 2.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't look too much into it. I know Xe was like compiling like a bunch of data, and like they did, but I didn't actually look at the spreadsheet.
Yeah, I haven't like done a lot of advanced looking into it, but from what I could tell, that's kind of how it goes. And then you have your creature building, which is your 1, 2, 3 that you're working on, is what it looks like.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
For me, the most interesting I saw with Picto, because I don't think we saw this with Viper at all, was it actually has a party buff.
Well, it's like there's a lot of buffs that we can't comprehend.
We don't know what all of them do till we get the tooltips and everything. But with Picto, there's none that we did see, which people are assuming is party wide, which is a 20-second damage buff for everybody when they like put down their little circle.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the grass thing where you touch grass and it gives everyone damage buff that's inside it, I think. Which
I think it's only
is
for
obviously the black.
Pictomancer.
Obviously, the black mages can put his ley lines just outside it to frustrate the Pictomancer.
Well, the black mage is going to get frustrated. I think.
I don't see. That's the thing. I don't think they're going to do that with the buff that goes out. I think that's going to be the same as every other class where it's got a long range and everything. But I'm wondering, does the AoE on the ground affect other players at all? I was hoping it would. I was actually, when I was first hearing about it, I was like, oh, is this an AoE haste? If everyone's in it, which sounds super cool. And I was like all in on that idea. And then I saw it go away after 5 GCDs from the Picto, and I'm like, there's no way.
Yeah.
I mean,
as
there's
cool
probably,
as that would be, I don't think it's going to happen.
There's probably consumable buffs, that just activate another ability or something like that. Yeah. But I'm interested to find out more, and I feel like playing like the visuals of that. When I saw the trailer and I saw Pictomancer, I was like, all right, that's cool. Look, the animations look goofy. They don't fit right. Whatever. I don't like it. But now, for some reason, I've warmed so much up to it. I'm like, this is just different. It looks and it feels different, and that feels refreshing, which makes me want to play it. So, we'll see.
So, isn't some of its abilities also a 3-point air, like a 4-second GCD or something?
Yeah, it has like a long cast.
Some of the painting or whatever is long cast, and then like some of it's like out of combat. You set up all your stuff out of combat with instacast, and then
you can like instacast the paintings, right, so that you can start with them.
Start with the burst, yeah. That seems to be a big thing that they're trying to focus on too, is to make sure everybody has their burst right at the beginning of a fight, and stopping a lot of that stuff overall. Because I mean, the majority of all damage in the game happens within the first, or in a fight, it happens within the first 20 seconds, right? Because that's when everybody can guarantee they're aligned as much as possible.
I'm wondering if it does have some like pre-pull, like paintings that they can do. What kind of tech we can actually do with that? Because I like think about that, and I'm like, oh, pre-pull Doton was a thing in the past. Square Enix didn't like that we could do that, but I thought it was really cool. Especially as a tank who had to interact with
songs
it.
as well. Remember, you used to be able to start with songs because you didn't have to target the enemy.
Which is a whole nother conversation we're going to get into soon. They changed some stuff. Some stuff got changed. Okay. Yeah. But I mean, with both Viper and Picto, it's really hard to like analyze it too much outside of like looking at it and being like, this looks neat. It looks cool. it seems like it embraces the current job design that they're going with, which brings us. A lot of it seems like there's a handful of actions that change to other actions, right?
I saw that this expansion where they started trading most things or most upgrades instead of like just adding new abilities in general.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's changing it to an upgraded version of the ability, right? And but with the combos, like you hit this button and it turns into this button to do the next button, right? That seems to be something that both those jobs have. And it seems like with some of the other jobs, that's what they've been discussing doing. And now we had this whole crazy debate with the community about, is it going to be really boring if your jobs just turn into other actions? And so we've seen this already with Gunbreaker, right? Gunbreaker came out the gate sort of like that. It's not the 1, 2, 3 standard one, but your burst. Every 30 seconds you're hitting one that changes into another action, and it has an OGCD that changes into another action as well. Yeah. So we've already kind of seen that a bit. They've done that in like PvP too, but we're not sure of the exact extent that they're going to do that with the current jobs and actions and everything yet. But it's scary to some people, and I guess maybe it's good for me to ask you, Sindalf, how you feel about this change.
So it kind of depends on what was the original intention of the button.
Mm-hmm.
So for some abilities like Confiteor, I think is a good example. That's fine to keep on one button because it's turning into 5 different things that are all damage and they're all being like AoE at that point. That's just a big hit at one after another. Everything is functionally the same in those cases. But when you have, I think it's bad if they ever went towards the whole like 1, 2, 3 being 1, 1, 1, because that's how originally, like my original Twitter post came up for that was if they were to do that, that removes a lot of options, some skill expression, as well for pressing your buttons, which not everyone agrees with, obviously, but that whole sort of thing becomes a lot more. It becomes easier to execute your combos, even if we were to go back in the past to the world where people had 3 different combos. Instead, you don't have to deal with that anymore, like having to make the decisions on what you want to press in your finger movements and all that stuff. You don't have to really do that anymore. You can just press one button, which every button, a player who's ever done like World Prog or done things in like actually learning content will know that that is a problem. In a way, because when you are learning something new, you're not focusing on your buttons. You're focusing on the mechanic. Yeah. But if you have to juggle both of them for your class to be functional, that becomes a difficult skill at that point.
That's true.
And they're kind of moving away from that, which is both good and bad. It depends on where they want to go with the content and your perspective and all that stuff. And it's going to affect each bit of content differently. Well, but I think it really depends on what the developer intention was with some of the buttons.
Okay.
And how they function.
Yeah.
For how they function, I do want to say like a good example for that as well would be Dark Knights 1, 2, 3, where you wouldn't want that to be that case because there is a reason to do 1, 2 over and over because it generates mana at a faster speed. Whereas other abilities, they might just be pure damage.
Okay.
Momo? So we go the same with Dragoon too. There's situations where you do like double true thrust and you wouldn't want your combo to like continue on. You'd want to break it purposely.
And that would be like the high level optimization, right?
Yeah, I mean it's just opting. That's kind of what that comes down to. But like, yeah.
Okay. Billy, you got any thoughts?
My thought on it is, as long as it's considered optional, I think it's a good idea. But I just personally support it. But not. I don't, as a player, I don't a controller player myself. I don't think it would be something I would use. It's not something that I would personally use. I like having to move my fingers around. But for people that may have physical issues with their body, like either permanent or otherwise because of disabilities, I would like this as a feature that would be added to the game so that it would be an accessibility option for people. I had to, like last year, I had to stop playing for a few months because I shattered my right wrist. I couldn't use my right hand for like 3 or 4 months, which meant I couldn't use my controller. So which meant I was limited on my options for playing 14 because of that. I still logged in and did some content, but like, so I think for disability reasons, I would like this as being an optional feature. But I can understand why people are against it as well. But I'm personally for it, even if it's not something I would need to use.
If we're talking specifically about the combo thing, I mean, let's be real. Like the majority of PC players use a third party, you know.
Do they?
I guess.
Because I mean, I don't know
Majority?
anything about
A lot
that
of people
shit.
do. There's a lot of people on PC who
Really?
use it. I'll be okay. I'll be the one to say it, I guess. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot.
Okay.
So it's like those players that need that plugin for like a just to make it easier on them. It's like I feel like there's no reason not to add it just for people who don't have access to that kind of like client that will help them out.
Now,
Yeah,
AKA the PS5 and Xbox players.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
PS4 currently.
and I mean, it's not like, I mean, I guess there is people who take it to an extreme, but is it really just the 1, 2, 3s that are in that for what people are using it for, or is it like their entire rotation is literally just one? No comment. Okay.
I think it depends on how you use it.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't use this, so like I don't know, but like I'd imagine.
See, here's the thing, dude. Like, so many people fuck up in Party Finder when I play with them. It's hard for me to believe that people are using this stuff, right? I mean, I can, like, at a wide scale. I understand that, like, at some point people like start using it, or some players do, but I think the majority of players play mostly vanilla, and their add-ons are to give bigger butts to their characters, and that's what they use. That's just my perception. Outside of
I
like
think
the
people
general
use
things.
it. Yeah, I mean, I don't think people go crazy with it. I mean, I know like I've seen like people even on stream that go crazy with it, but like I think the majority of people just use it for like use quality of life stuff that like just makes it easier for them, but without changing the game
Right.
in like a huge way.
Well, an example is, I said, talking about people with disabilities. Like a friend of mine has to use the tool because he has cerebral palsy, so he has issues with his left hand. So he's a one-handed gamer. So he uses the tool, and he sent me a message saying he's really happy that this change will allow him to not use the third-party tool because he doesn't want to, but he has to if he wants to play.
I don't know a lot about like what programs are out there to kind of help with the disabilities and everything, but I would assume there's like a decent amount of programs out there that try to work with, in general, with video games and stuff on your PC to make things easier, and hardware and stuff like that out there. But I mean, it does make it a kind of a sticky conversation every time we talk about like games being difficult and everything. If, you know, the accessibility being an option, we all support accessibility, but at the same time, I don't think that's the core reason for a lot of changes out there. You know, how do I phrase this the right way? It's not always the reason why a change is out there. And like there should still be something out there difficult wise, and we don't want to completely just negate the entire mechanics of a game on that. And speaking for other people too, right? It's
well,
not
actually,
like, go ahead.
You mentioned that it's what a lot of, so at least with some opinions that some people might have is that like when you add something like this, you have all these options with different classes you can play, and you can have options for how you play your class, and there's different ways to overcome different limitations. Like I have the ability, I can't really use modifiers, so I find ways to put that on my mouse and numpad and things like that because I don't have the finger ability to do it, and that's at least how I overcome some of those issues. But some people do think that they shouldn't make an accessibility change because it will end up changing how the majority of players interact with a game, and that might not be the right choice to make because it will affect the game design in a general. However, what you did say before, Frosty, about speaking for those people, there is actually a lot of times where a lot of people come out of the woodwork and they'll be like speaking for people who have accessibility issues. And I sometimes have always thought to myself, like, what if I made a game? Like, what if I made a game? How would I make it accessible to people? And the answer is I don't know, because that's not me.
Mm-hmm.
So I think when having those discussions, what I'd really actually like to see one day is just bring those individuals in, give them the platform for a bit, and have them speak for what they believe that they would need. Because that's also going to change per person to person.
Right.
And in some ways, it's not up to us to decide what is for them.
Right. And I think that's true too. And I don't remember this. It kind of went away after a bit. But there was a point to where it was not really a good thing to say blind prog anymore. But I think that that went away, right? No one like kept on that. But it was a huge thing for a while.
Yeah, you got in trouble on Twitch, right, for using it as a tag, if I'm rightly, for a while.
Yeah. And it was just like, why? Who came and said that, right? So I don't know. It's a weird world sometimes when we're discussing these things, but I think it's important to talk about it, but it's also important to understand what's actually real, a real problem, and what's an imagined problem.
What's more like, maybe the word was virtue signaling?
Maybe.
Might be the right term.
Yeah.
Or like feeling like you're doing something, but it's not actually helping anybody. I work in tech, and I see that a bunch, where some people will argue that around the time, there was a time when people wanted to make a big terminology change to things, similar to when it's like, oh, you're getting in trouble for saying blind prog, where you might want to change some of your terminology from, like, you use the words before blacklist and whitelist to allow list and block list, which I will agree that a lot of the people who are against that, they do have some good points, while others will say this doesn't actually do much, and you're just trying to feel good about it at the end without actually doing something important.
Right. I mean, well, it's just
that was a big thing for a while.
I mean, and this gets into a whole big conversation, because, like, in the end, we're all moving, trying to be better than what we were before. Like, if you go back and you watch like old MTV award shows, or you go watch some other stuff, you're like, okay, some things back then were not okay, right? And so it's an evolution, and we're in the middle of it. I don't think it will ever get out of it, but it just takes us a while to figure out the right answers and stuff. That being all said, you know, we're mainly talking about this because we were talking about accessibility with the change actions, where it's going into the combos one after another, being an optional thing, and if it's actually with the 1, 2, 3 combos, if it's actually with just side actions or anything. And to me, when we're talking about these things, as long as they're making changes that still make the game fun, right? You don't need a 1, 2, 3 combo for pure skill expression, pure everything. There's other ways to express that, but if they completely ignore the ways to still add some level of skill expression, that's when it becomes a problem. We have to see the full thing developed out and how it feels afterwards. I wasn't ever expecting a lot of changes when it came to, you know, what was going to happen this whole expansion, because they pretty much said, we're not going to really change too much. We're going to keep it kind of how it is, do a couple updates, and just move forward, and maybe thinking about it later. Because in their mind, they want to change the battle content and have more interesting battle content, like the fights and everything, and then come back to chops later and put the resources towards making chops interesting at level 100, or past level 100. Is my understanding.
Well, haven't they said that they actually don't want to go beyond 100? In fact, I think Yoshi P fought to try and not get 100. Like,
I actually don't remember that being said, but he did. I mean, I'm talking about the PAX East presentation. And in the PAX East presentation, he directly said, I don't know what we're going to do after 100. Do we do 110? Do we do 170? Like, when do we stop? Where's, like, what's going on with that, right? Well, we don't know, but since we're ending up at level 100, we kind of just wanted to keep it the way it is, and then move forward after that. If you guys are curious about those comments, I have a video on it that you guys could go watch, where I discussed his comments on PAX East and the game getting easier. Or you could just go watch the PAX East presentation that they did recently, and it will give you the details on it. So
They might go for. They might give us prestige classes. That could be interesting.
They were against subclasses before.
Or they could do. They might actually do a level squish potentially, because we did a stat squish before. You see how much health everybody has? Tanks are gonna have like 200k at the end of the expansion. We kind of need another one.
Right.
It also worries me that they might do the merit point system. That would be something.
That
And
actually would be really cool.
Well, let's skip that because we don't know. We're speculating about 8.0 right now, guys. We're on 7.0.
Wait, you say that, but they were doing that during the live lair.
True.
So,
And it was a weird conversation a little bit, right? It was a weird conversation because they were saying, oh yeah, we have some things that we're discussing with Res and everything else, but we decided not to go forward with it. We still discuss it later, in 8.0. And everybody's like, why wait till 8.0? All right, why are you waiting till 8.0? Why aren't you adding 20 bosses in the game at the same time? Why aren't you doing, there's limits, I think, to the scope of development when it comes to video games, and job changes is something that changes everything. So they have to put a lot of resources into it. We'd probably lose a couple other things that were going into the expansion. It's not like an infinite amount of resources. At least in my perspective of this, right? Just hold them to the fire. 8.0. If we get the exact same job action trailer and when we're
I don't think they'll ever get rid of it.
You don't think so?
I don't think they'll get rid of Res ever.
Oh, who knows, dude? They had some positive responses to how the Criterion dungeons were working, right?
They'd have to completely change how healer res works, because if you get rid of caster raises, then they're already allergic to giving healers responsibility in Savage and Ultimate raids. To completely give them the sole raise responsibility on top of that is that's not happening unless they completely change their fight design.
This might sound a bit weird, but could we see the return of re-raise from Pharmacy 11 if they get rid of raise on supporters?
Nah, probably
not. Have it so that the healers can put a re-raise on the tanks, so that's a second raise if need be as an emergency.
Maybe it's possible if there's a good enough punishment for it, because that sounds very abusable.
I mean, the ability to make it a ridiculously long recast.
The thing is the game does not function well under cases where people kill themselves in the middle of a mechanic. When the mechanic has gone out, a debuff and everything, and then somebody just jumps off the edge. You can see this in something like Hello World, where people call it Goodbye World, to just skip entire difficult parts.
Yeah, the Goodbye World, where the melee jump off the edge so they can skip the whole mechanic, which is even the hard mechanic in my opinion.
Yeah, things like that become more viable.
Why does A4S come into my head? with the passing of whatever, right? The stacks and using the server ticks to get past part of that mechanic, right? Intentionally killing people.
There's also other crazy things that could come with that, such as if you had a re-raise, where would you raise? Afterwards?
Guys, why are we talking about re-raises? We got so much shit to cover, guys. All right, let's talk about what we know. All right, we know. All right, another thing they're doing that is evident across a lot of jobs is they're trying to squeeze your 1 minute or 2 minutes under your 1 or 2 minute high damage actions under your 1 to 2 minute high buffs, right? Your 1 or 2 minute buffs are only going to be accessible if you I'm trying to word this correctly. Your actions that are 1 or 2 minutes on cooldown are only accessible if you press the buff that's at 1 and 2 minutes, right? Like fight or flight. You won't be able to do Goring Blade until you hit fight or flight. Which is, it feels wrong in a way to me, because I feel like it takes away just a little bit of control, so it could force people who don't know how to put Goring Blade under fight or flight to do it correctly.
It removes a lot of options that you might have had that could be potentially, in some ways, unoptimal, but also optimal. It's hard to say right now without seeing the details of everything of where it could be. But like you have abilities like they didn't say they're doing it with this one, but like let's say they did it to something like Shadowbringer on Dark Knight. Your big cleave that does a lot of damage. There are times when you might have said, "Oh, you know what? I'm going to not press this in my burst because I want to save it for about 20-25 seconds from now for either a slight DPS check, like let's say DSR meteors, when they're coming down after Death of the Heavens, and I want to hit multiple targets. Or I want to save it for the beginning of like Double Dragons and I want to hit multiple targets."
Right.
That is a smart decision that you can make.
Well, I mean,
at those points, but being able to not do that anymore kind of just feels bad.
I mean, that does feel bad. I think that feels a little bit off. And the example I was given the other day is like when someone's doing a dungeon, you're hitting fight or flight to do AoE abilities, right? And then when you get all these things down low, and you have one or two mobs, you're not using AoE abilities anymore, but you don't have Gore and Blade because your fight or flight's on cooldown, right? And so you can't even hit like that high damage single target ability because you used it for AoE abilities. It's, you know, just little things like that, just kind of locking us into a raid rotation, just feels uncomfortable in other situations.
It's a casual only change for the most part, I feel, because like even in like Gunbreaker, it's like it screws Gunbreaker pretty heavily because like Sonic Break specifically is a dot, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes there may be a situation, let's say a phase ends at like 4:30 or something, right? So you would opt to using Sonic Break like first GCD, but like if you're holding your burst until like 20 seconds into the pull or something, then now Gunbreaker can't, like they don't have any freedom to like optimize their Sonic Break, right? They'd have to pop No Mercy pre-pull and then, you know, get those extra ticks.
Yeah. I don't know. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say that I really agree with that, Momo, because I kept thinking about that, like, oh, I'm now forced to press my dot only under those conditions. And that just feels, anyone who had to like juggle like 2 or 3 dots back in the day, that really was something that I personally found fun. I don't think it works as well in current fight design, and that's maybe why they made that change, partially. But being able to actually choose and decide when you use your dot, in order to optimize the amount of ticks or the amount of damage you're going to get, and maybe replace that with another GCD, feels like you can't do that as much now with Gunbreaker, given what they've said. And I really don't like that. I mean, it's still there because you don't have to press the Sonic Break. You can press it out. You can press another GCD. But realistically, you would have moved that Sonic Break elsewhere so you don't lose it because it's still a lot of potency.
Right.
Yeah,
probably.
it would make way more sense. Like it's fine for like No Mercy to turn into Sonic Break, but it's weird to have it locked behind No Mercy. I don't like that.
Yeah.
Like, being able to sunder it would be good.
Yeah.
Hold on a moment. Do you think that it gives you a buff that lets you use No Mercy, or that it's actually completely tied to the buff?
I guess we don't know, but by the way they said it, I just assume they mean it. Sounds like it's locked behind No Mercy.
Yeah, I feel like if No Mercy goes away, then you won't be able to use it anymore. But I mean, we don't know for sure. There could be a buff that's like a 2-minute buff on it or something, right? And it just lets you kind of hold on to it for a while. They said they give you a buff, but then it depends on how long does that buff last, right? Is it a 1-minute buff? Is it a 30-second buff? Is it a 10-second buff? I'm guessing it's going to be like a 30-second buff or something like that.
Yeah, how long do combos last again nowadays after you press the GCD? Like exact
30.
amount of seconds? Yeah, 30. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
And No Mercy is usually about 20 seconds. So if it actually just did that same thing where it's like, oh, you have, like, do I have 20 seconds to press this button? Or do I have 30 where you could potentially press it out of No Mercy? There could be some interesting things there. But we'll have to see how it interacts.
I'm assuming you don't have to press it immediately after hitting No Mercy, right? But you do have to hit it, sometime within the range after hitting it. It's not just going to stay up for you indefinitely. All right. Well, the other thing is potencies, like MIT timings and the strength of like damage reduction, right? A lot of that stuff is going up in the 90, 91 plus content, which could signal a couple of things, right? It gives us all copium that we're gonna need to have higher mitigation going into content.
No,
but probably not, right?
it doesn't really change it. It's just a quality of life thing. Like 15-second auto reprisal and feint don't change it. It like doesn't really change how you admit something, right? It just makes it easier
it
to
does
time
a little
certain
bit.
things.
If the boss has an action that
mean-
is like within, like they do one action and another action within 10 seconds, then you get a comfy mid on both of those, right?
Right, but like
What if a boss in the future gets something like the Red Mage dual cast where it does an action, there's an action straight afterwards? That 15 seconds might be enough to help you cover both of them.
Yeah.
like the first thing I think of is top, where it's like 10 seconds can cover the spreads and the stack, right? Or the the spreads and stack and for wave cannon. But like 15 is just like way more accessible, right? Like it's so much easier to time.
Yeah. Well, I
And
mean,
it's
if
like
we look at Harrowing Hell is probably a decent example for that, because a lot of mitigations don't cover that fully, right? And so you kind of have to pace them out throughout Harrowing Hell. And so maybe we're going to see a lot more of those just huge bursts of damage coming out that we need mitigation to last a little bit longer through.
yeah, I don't see it personally, because like there's no way they design MIT or AoE MIT already around 10 seconds, right? It's 100% around 15-second MITs. Like there's no way they're looking at like an AoE and they're like, yes, let's take into account Addle, Feint, and Reprisal. They're just like, those are just like byproducts, because like every other min in the games you have 15 or 20 seconds, right? They're much longer in comparison.
So you think
like
they're just more standardizing than anything else?
Yeah, they're just standardizing it.
Well, I mean, if tanks both use their mitts, back to back, half of the entire fight will be damage reduced, right?
Yeah, realistically, that doesn't happen though.
Right.
Because you want to, because there is a situation, like healers are still strong too. There is a case where it says, okay, you're using quote optimal amount of usages for MIT, but was that even worth it? Did you do anything important? Did you actually help? Or do you think you're helping? Tanks have to deal with that occasionally with their own MIT, especially Dark Knight with like TBN. Sometimes like, oh yeah, I'm using all this MIT in places, and it's like, yeah, well, your healer had an off GCD for you anyway. You didn't actually do anything but add buttons that you pressed.
I mean, that's fair. That's fair. Now, I will say, you guys play in some pretty damn good groups. Although you play a lot of Party Finder Ultimate right now, Sindalf, right?
Occasionally, yeah.
Yeah. A lot of this stuff will help Party Finder out, I think, a good bit. Depending on if they use it or not, right? But
I think a lot of
is.
this will...
Good.
Go on.
I was gonna say, yeah. I mean, I was gonna say it just standardizes it, makes it quality of life. But I mean, this is like literally like kind of like a segue, but like this is like a really good example of like just these quality of life changes, like making like they compound onto like already existing quality of life features that make the content feel easier, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember seeing a discussion about like UCOB back when it was like relevant. It's like a lot of people don't understand like half the fight design for like old content like that is like based on the toolkit existing at the time. And when these quality of life features either remove completely, like enmity, MP management's easier, instant cast shields, right? Like, or instant applying shields now, like they don't propagate, 30 on buffs, all this stuff, right? Like they compound on top of each other.
Yeah.
And it can feel really bad.
But I mean, should they care about like making old content too easy?
No, that wasn't the point of the.
Oh, okay. I was just sorry.
No, I don't think they care, and I don't think they really should care, to be honest.
Right.
I think it's just that at the time.
I mean, the new changes for the reprisal and stuff like that is after level 90, so it wouldn't affect old content, right? I thought they said.
Yeah, I mean that's all aimed at new content. Yeah, it's all. That's
Yeah.
true. Yeah, it's all aimed for whatever they're coming out with next. And so it's going to feel kind of weird, you know? You have that 15-second buff in like the 100 level content you're doing, and then you go back to like 90 level, and then it's only 10% or 10 seconds.
I mean, it's good. It's good because I mean, in a way, it keeps the I guess prestige in a way of the fight, because like imagine like 15-second reprisal on like T or something, right? Like it would make living liquid phase like significantly easier to mitigate,
Right,
BJCC stuff like that. Even stuff like top and P6, right? Like 15-second mid would go a long way.
True. That's true.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it also the tank potencies on their stuff's going to go up too, right? So more damage is going to be reduced overall.
We don't know if it's potency.
I assumed it is. That's how it was kind of phrased, wasn't it?
So they said that they're going to get stronger in some way. Same thing with Rampart. I don't know how they're going to do it because they didn't go into specifics. But what I have seen, they've said two things. Well, I've seen one thing and I've heard them say another, which was every tank is going to have something unique for their current 30%, which is really interesting because I want to know what that is. Like really bad. Because I'm like, oh, there's a change now that makes it say maybe we'll take this tank over another tank depending on the defensive. I like that so much.
Okay.
But there's also that whenever I was checking some of the footage, all the tanks start using their 30% mitigation, the new one, and you can see when a buff drops off of a player, and I'm pretty sure I didn't see it at the 15-second mark. I can't say that for sure, but I think they're extending them all to 20 seconds. I'm not sure if we're going to end up making use of that, but it seems like they are.
Yeah.
I think anyway.
I mean, we'll see. Yeah, I thought stronger was potency, but if they just add effects to it and make Rampart, I guess, act sort of like the first 5 seconds you get an increased damage, potency or whatever. Mitigation potency, and then in the next 20 seconds or so it's going to be weaker. I don't know. They could do a handful of different things with it, but it's copium to hope that we need it and it's not just making the game easier in general, I guess.
I don't think we have the potential of needing it if the tank damage is kind of insane for just like tank busters, which would be kind of interesting to me because it means that if they make it so that and they balance numbers around, like let's say a 40% instead of a 30%, that means your other abilities that other party members can give you that are only worth 10%, it feels like you might not be able to live busters as easily on just party side mitigation, because right now you can still do that you can do that kind of comfortably if you press the right buttons. But that you kind of move away from that, where you never want to go into a buster without something from yourself. Which I mean, you already don't, but that becomes less of an option. It also makes it so failure states have to do insane damage, which they still kind of already do. But the more mitt you give a tank, that means the more times they can just press all their kitchen sink, walk into something that would normally kill you, and it just doesn't. But it would kill everybody else because they don't have that like extra percentage.
Yeah, I mean, there's some situations in top P5 where tanks can't live a buster by themselves. Like you need healer mitt or GCDs or like something from like an outside source.
Right.
So I mean, it's like they could just make things like really hard hitting. I mean, they have in this expansion. Like,
my hope is that it's not all going to be kitchen sink. Like my hope is always going to be that no buster is a kitchen sink buster, right? You need to use some mitigation somewhere else, and that if you're using kitchen sink busters, then you're failing somewhere else. But with invulnerabilities, that makes it kind of difficult too, because you cycle between invulnerability and a kitchen sink, and it kind of feels dumb. And the very worst case scenario, you have your 25 or 30 second mitigation, right? And then you just get super shields and everything. You can live through stuff too, which I don't know.
I mean, I think that was good.
I was gonna say some of that depends on the frequency of busters, and do they ever bring back like maybe not untelegraphed but quick casting mini busters or something like that, where let's say you're topped with like full health and you get hit by one of these like mini busters. It wouldn't kill you, but it would put you in a very, very low HP state. And that's when you start having situations like that, or those on top of a mechanic plus maybe some raid-wide AoE at the same time, that's where it's like, you start thinking it's a tank. Can I make use of my like 20-second or like longer mitigation during those moments to make it easier on my healer, which isn't for a buster, but that's also a decision that you have to make by moving stuff away from a buster towards other attacks. And we haven't had to do that in a very long time, where that's been important to really think about.
I mean, like, during a lot of, like, ultimate prog for me, right, what a lot of stuff that happens is someone will die or something will happen to where someone's out somewhere, and it's just a discussion. All right, who has myth they haven't used or they're using it somewhere stupid, right? And then you just figure out how to kind of work some of that stuff out. We don't have those conversations as much in, like, Savage, right? I mean, it's just blast shit. As long as one person's doing something, you're probably okay. But I don't know. All right. Let's talk about this other general change that kind of hit everything, which is they're taking away a lot of stuff where you press your 2 minute or 1 minute and you don't get 50 gauge from it anymore. Instead, it just gives you the ability to use an action that you would have used that 50 gauge on. That seems just like a general quality of life thing that's going to put a lot of emphasis on just being able to do three versions of your burst, your big hits, instead of limiting it down to 2. I don't know. It just makes balancing all that stuff, I guess, easier. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
It just makes me feel like everything has turned into amplifier. You know, the Black Mage ability that gives you one of the free procs.
Why am I?
That's what it makes me sound like to me.
Okay.
I mean, it could go either way, to be honest. Like, on one hand, you remove the punishment factor of fucking up, like that kind of, like, let's say you're doing, like, I don't know, a triple and shroud or something, right? And you fuck up the plentiful harvest, like, setup. You know, you kind of get punished for that. Now, you probably won't. Like, it's really hard to say because, like, we haven't seen how it works.
Well, I mean, the thing is, if
so
you
it's
do,
like, it could go either way.
With Reaper in particular, if you do 3 Enshrouds in a row, it's going to be 3 GCDs longer now than it was before.
Yeah, well, I mean, hypothetically speaking, based on the information we have on current job design, like, if that was the case today, like, it just makes it technically less punishing to mess up.
Right.
Which I guess is, like, you know...
Okay.
I mean, yeah.
Fair. All right. Sindalf, any thoughts on it?
Some of this just sounded like it's kind of just being similar to how Tank is now, or has been for a while.
Yeah.
Where everything just happens under your burst window. You press the same button multiple times in a row because it gives you you go into your burst, you press a button, you get access to it to do it multiple times. And the thing that kind of worries me about that, if they like continue to go down a route like that, is so many people I know don't want to play Tank because of that. They hate that. They don't find it fun. And now it seems like we're going closer to that sometimes.
Well, I mean, like,
it makes it a little worrying in a way.
I mean, that's a good note just to bring up, is like, what do different roles have that's fun for them, right? And when we're talking about tanks, the fun part, I guess, is how do you optimally reduce the overall damage in the fight and make other people feel like, wow, he's really not taking any damage, unless if you just don't care, right? And just hope the healer fixes everything. Then you just kind of throw all your buffs in one place, and then doing a less difficult rotation. 2 of the tanks only doing 1 minute rotations every single time, and the other 2 doing like having a 2 minute in there. But like it's that's tanks, right? Is trying to make everyone feel more comfy, or make the healers feel comfy, I guess, in a way. Healers only have fun if you're in a bad party.
I don't know. I also, as a healer main, I also like it when I get a good tank occasionally. Like, I like bad pies because, you know, it gives me something to do, but then sometimes I get the nice break of an actual tank that presses cooldowns, and it makes me happy.
But then you start feeling relaxed, and the next party you go in, that tank just gets fucking smashed. Because you're like, you should have lived. The last dude lived.
I mean, it definitely does add like a disparity, or like I've definitely gotten frustrated, and especially in Ultimate PF, where it's like you have like a really good tank in like another party, but then like the next tank just doesn't press mid at all, and just it can be pretty frustrating. Like the disparity between, like, I think it's more you see it more often in like in fights that don't punish, like that aren't a binary check of, hey, you either press your mid or you die or you live, right? Like stuff
Right.
like I guess T is a good example, where it's like Living Liquid and BJCC. There's like a ton of mid optimization you can do, but tanks don't know how to do because like why would they? Like
They
they're
haven't
not
died.
they're
They
not
haven't been
taught.
punished.
Yeah, exactly. They're not being punished for like messing up
Yeah.
their mid. So like you see it more like that kind of like fight, but like I've been definitely frustrated before. The disparity between them.
Yeah. And then when you get to damage dealers, depending on which role you're playing, it all comes to how do I make a super optimal rotation and move in a way that makes me optimal as well within a fight, and that's it. There's not much, and if you have a bad party, good party, doesn't matter. You're moving exactly the same way for the most part, right? Unless if you're really smart and you know all the mechanics and you could figure out, if I run away from the party, they'll live, things like that. But for the most part, it's just optimizing a heavier rotation in general. And your
Or
movement.
I used to get my healer back in the day. I can't remember what fight it was exactly off the top of my head. It was an Omega fight. This was back when Grease Lightning. Remember when you had Earth's Reply and you took damage and you Grease Lightning restored? You know, it was reset after you got hit. I can't remember the fight exactly, but the wall didn't kill you, but gave you a damage down. Like, not damage down, but paralyze. But I
Oh, you
used to run.
Thoradin?
No, not Forden. The one with the Bibelo?
Oh, the
one between
Bibelos or whatever.
Guardian.
That dungeon where you had to like stand in the circles and the orbs and everything to stop summons. So you're
No,
talking
the
about
raid.
that?
The raid
Guardian?
one. The Omega.
07?
I think it was Omega 07. Yeah, 07.
07? Okay.
Because I worked out that if I ran into the wall just between the mechanics, I'd be able to keep my Grease Lightning the entire time. I used to really annoy my healer back in the day because I'd just run in just as it dropped so I could keep my Grease Lightning for the entire fight without having it ever drop.
Okay.
It was great.
Don't have to worry about that anymore, do you?
Nah.
And hear the sadness.
And now I'm a white mage, so
Yeah. Now you'll have dashes. That's real cool.
yeah. Which, by the way, confused me because I play a lot of PvP nowadays, and everyone's like, "Dash is new." I'm like, "Wait, isn't it? Didn't we already have Dash?" And I forgot the fact that that's only. I keep forgetting it's only PvP.
Yeah.
Like I saw the animation thinking I already had that, and I was really confused the entire night, thinking, "Wait, I have that? No, I don't have
It's
that."
a whole different world in
I have
PvP,
that.
man. A whole different world. But the last general change before we start like nitpicking a few changes that kind of stand out for us is the swift cast one going down to 40 seconds. Which really in general just adds in making some rotations maybe a little bit easier who would use it for doing damage, I guess. Black Mage maybe get a little bit more movement, and also make it to where healers can res people. Well, depending on if they use it for glare or not, I guess it depends on if they would even use it.
No,
for
it
res,
just
but
it doesn't change anything for healers unless like you're using it, which you don't in prog anyways for the most part.
I use it in prog all the time. What are you talking? Well, I mean, I don't use it for damage. You're right.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. Everyone dies all the time, so I use it. So, I mean, it's a neat little change. I think the only one person that's really going to get a huge effect out of it is Black Mage, right? They're going to feel it the most. I mean,
Maybe.
summoners, but like it depends on
because summoners wouldn't they sometimes used to back in the swift cast their summons. So it's been ages since I've actually played a
No,
summoner.
summoners swift cast. There's a couple spells they swift cast. What was it? What's the optimal one for them to do? One on Ifrit and one on Garuda. I think they can both use it. I think it's the Ifrit one.
They both have a really long cast on them, right?
Yeah, both
Link,
have. The Garuda one, is that the optimal one the chat says? Yeah.
Link said Slipstream under pot.
If you guys find a summoner that knows how to res in a group, you let me know. I don't know a lot anymore. Red mages could just kind of do it, but summoners, they're not so keen on hard casting, and that swift cast is usually dedicated to another spell. But yeah. All right, yeah. It's just quality of life, nothing too crazy.
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
before we move on from like the general changes,
Sure.
there's one more that I noticed.
Sure.
So I was looking through some of the footage of the job action for, I believe, Dragoon and Monk, and I also see this with Pictomancer potentially. The abilities like Battle Litany and Brotherhood look like they're 20 seconds now instead of 15, which kind of means that our burst windows are even longer than they were before. And I've heard some players say that that's one of the issues with our burst windows is that they're long now, but now they're definitely 20 seconds because everyone's getting that.
So
I think everyone's getting it.
I didn't see that, but if everything's moving to a 20-second for buff windows, I guess that's more homogenization that we're seeing overall, right?
Yeah, it would be. They never explicitly said it, but I think like what originally tipped me off of this is like the I believe it was when you hit Brotherhood on Monk, your action gauge like flashes a little bit. If I remember correctly, and it's doing that for 20 seconds in the action. You can also see it as well for Battle Litany, with the buffs falling on and off.
Okay.
The thing that made me wonder about that is, does this change itemization? And you might be able to answer this, Momo, because with our current meta of the game, everyone's like 2.5 GCD, and it's like, okay, cool. But the only way you'd be able to get all your GCDs under all your buffs, which I believe is 9 GCDs under 20-second buffs, is if you played absolutely perfect everybody together, which is unrealistic with latency and other things. Wouldn't that mean that we could potentially move towards having a little bit of skill speed, like 2.45, something like that, so you can get 1 extra GCD under party buffs?
It would depend on the job. I mean, like now you have some jobs that like, I think it was like a discussion back in Shadowbringers with Gunbreaker. It like slow skill speed, fast skill speed. Like you get like extra GCDs under the Mercy. Sometimes be gain, sometimes not. Like I think you'd have those discussions again.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it'd be the case for every job, but
probably not. No.
But you would see some stuff like that, yeah. But I feel like that's like stuff you already think about potentially, maybe. At least on Gunbreaker, right? Because
okay.
I'm just hoping we had like some of this maybe would allow us to have more of those discussions, because as of late, almost every class I look at, for the most part, at least on the tank side, everyone's just like, oh, we want to go slow.
Yeah.
And I think that is a little boring, because it's not fun to have a slow GCD all the time and also not have any item choices. Because at that point, it becomes a decision. Which one do you want to make? You want to make the riskier, tighter, slow set that could potentially do more, or do you want to go fast and maybe be a bit more consistent, but the ceiling is not as high? And that'll come down to the player of what they want to choose and which do they value more.
I think it's like the issue though is like, because like the 20-second thing you were discussing right now, like we also saw it and it was like, because like it's what you're saying is true, but it's also like, man, that's just like another facet, man, that they're removing. Because like even now, like again, this is literally just all optimization. This should not matter whatsoever to like the casual player. Yeah, exactly. But it's like it's just another facet of optimization that gets kind of like neutered, right? Because like sometimes like you'll press 20s in advance of like 15s, or even like sometimes you'll even press like, you know, like the delayed tech under like a 15, right? But it's like now it's like everybody's pressing their 20s at the exact same time every pull. There's probably not going to be much drift, right? Or like optimization, unless like when do you press 15s, when do you press 20s?
And if classes have abilities tied to hitting their 2 minutes and buffs, do you have to press it immediately or not? I don't assume you do, but if you would have to, I feel like there one day will be this argument, especially in a pug scenario where, you know, people are jumping in trying to parse in a pug, where everyone's like, I got to be the last one to press my 2s so I can press my big button under everybody. I can't accidentally press it first, because in a pug there'll be naturally like a small like window of difference between everyone, and then suddenly they press the button and they missed like maybe someone putting up another buff.
I mean,
I wonder if that will end up being a thing.
I know there's people who think like that in a party, but it's a dumb way to think.
It is.
Because
there will be people that do that.
Yeah.
There will be people that do that. I had a dungeon where a Dragoon didn't want to press it because he wanted the highest damage. He didn't want to limit break because his damage. So yes, there will be people out there.
Like, whoa. It's so silly.
Oh, yeah. We didn't see Picto or Viper limit break, by the way, did we?
We saw Viper. They showed Viper like a couple times. They showed it in the benchmark at the very end, and they showed it at the beginning of the the job trailer, I think, before they went into the jobs and everything. But they haven't shown Picto. So that's
I think I think we've seen the Picto.
have
I
we?
think it's going to be when they showed Picto with Crowell for the first time. I
Mhm.
really think it's going to be that Spriggan that's going to
That's
be involved
boring.
with the LB. I don't think it's going to be the exact LB3, but I feel like that's going to be something to do with it. Yeah.
I think Spriggan's just another
Jared
creature
said.
that you can make. I think Spriggan's just going to be like you go back and forth between Moogle and Spriggan or whatever. That's my hope. All right, but I could be wrong. Could be Spriggan. Spriggan feels very underwhelming to me. I don't think they're really that cool, guys. They just like rocks. Okay, Ziggy Stardust
rocks
was
are
like
cool.
the
You're not a
best
rock
one or
fan?
something.
Where's
I
your rock
guess.
collection?
They're minerals.
Did you not have a pet rock growing up?
No, I sure didn't.
Did you ever like go out to the forest and like bring back a stick? And
I
be
did.
Like,
Or
"Mom,
stick
like,
or
here,
a
look at
rock,
my
and I
cool
thought they were
stick."
cool.
Same thing with the stick.
Jeez. Guys, we got 45 minutes to talk about after all these job changes, so let's dive into them. Tanks is a good one to start with, because I think in general most of the tank stuff outside of what we've already talked about hasn't really changed too much, except for they're all getting 1 or 2 more GCDs, except for Gunbreaker, who's getting a whole 3 of them, right?
They're getting 3, but it's probably all going to be buttons that turn into another. Like,
Yeah.
continuation, Gnashing Fang. So functionally, they're gaining 3 animations, but probably 1 button.
Okay.
Which, I mean, it makes sense because they're running out of hotbar space.
Yeah. I mean, if you really just like putting stuff across the hotbar, you could just turn the optional thing off and just it all just
You could.
out, right? But general thoughts. First, actually, Momo and Chile, if you guys have any thoughts on it, and any additional thoughts from Sindalf afterwards too.
You want to go first?
Me?
Yeah, tanks. What do you think, Momo?
I mean, I don't really have an opinion, to be honest. I think
Okay.
Gunbreaker looks cool with like the Final Fantasy VIII Renzen Kuken, but yeah, no, it's just I'm kind of like I don't really like I didn't really play tanks this expansion like I did in the previous one, so it's like I don't really have a
Okay.
opinion.
Okay, that's fair. You don't have to have an opinion. It's okay. All right. I feel
And I'm
like
pretty much the same way. Like I haven't really touched tank this expansion, or even the previous expansion, really. So I have no real experience with the current tank.
well, I
I mean,
mean,
I've leveled them up, of course, because I've everything to 90, but that's about it.
in general, it seems like the damage overall between the tanks, it depends on how the potencies work out and how they change potencies and everything else. But in general, if they're putting a whole bunch of extra like in moves to everything, the damage should technically go up without huge potency changes. And Gunbreaker getting 3 new extra unlockable skills to hit, well, you would think naturally their DPS would go up more than the other tanks. Again, without knowing potencies, it's hard to really tell, but it would make sense a little bit, right?
It's maybe. It depends where that damage is. So realistically, a lot of those new things would be put in a burst window.
Hmm.
But how much does that matter in terms of like your damage that you do? A good example for that would be something like DSRI's phase. So Dark Knight is is pretty much the highest damaging tank that you have at like the highest end. But that whole phase, they do terrible damage because they don't have any of their burst. They 1, 2, 3, which is naturally weaker than every other tank out there. And because of that, they end up just doing like terrible, terrible damage. And we don't, the way current content is, outside of those really niche situations, you don't really have to ever factor that in. But some tanks are just better in different situations for damage. But you're also a tank, and you're now thinking about the damage. I'm a little disappointed none of this was on the defensive side. Like,
Well, I
give me
mean,
a
like
new
the one thing
defensive
we
button.
got was that they'd get something unique to their defensive kit, right? I mean, so there's that to look forward to. Everything else seems kind of muddled down. Like the Paladin getting like their atonement. Oh, you're not going to hit 3 atonements in a row. You're going to get a new effect on the second and third one, or a new visual effect. Sorry, on the second and third one. They didn't really change anything. They just made it feel like you weren't hitting atonement 3 times in a row. Right?
Yeah,
So
that would make sense.
yeah.
There is one change though with all these tank stuff that I think is interesting, but also a little sad depending on how they do it. Both Gunbreaker and Dark Knight have lost their gap closer doing damage.
Yeah, that's true.
So a lot of players hate that your gap closer does damage. I think it's a great thing. I want to keep that because I believe there is a decision you have to make as a player of do you put it in a burst to get one extra usages because you're pressing it when you can, or to like just do more damage, or do you want to hold it so that you can get through a phase a little faster and like get back to the boss and things like that when you have to disconnect. There's some skill in there.
The average
making those
player,
decisions.
there's no decision. It's just put out
I know.
damage. The average player, there is no decision on that.
I've got to disagree with you there. I feel like having damage on a gap closer makes you want to use it for more than, during phases where you might not, like, how do I put it? Where you might not need to gap close, you're just going to throw it out to do more damage. And that's what a lot of people will do. Like, yes, if you're optimizing it like you are, then sure, you're going to time it. But a lot of people will be like, oh, my fight or flight is up. I'll just jump up. My damage up ability is up. I'll press this now. They're not, and then when they have to actually run out and jump in the future, they're going to be like, oh, well, I guess I don't have my gap closer anymore. I feel like, yes, that's a skill issue, but at the same time, it's going to be easier for a lot of people to just have it not be damage.
Yeah.
So, like,
I think.
Go
on.
ahead.
I was going to say that I think that, yeah, you're right, but as you said, it's a skill issue, and I do think that players need to have that decision because it's a thing that comes with comfort of being able to put something under your buffs instead of saving it for the utility. It's multi-purpose.
Right.
You get to make a decision, and I personally really like that.
Yeah, I mean, player agency is always good in my opinion as well.
But I mean, when you're talking to most of the player base, they're always just worried about damage and everything else.
Yeah,
you know what's
I don't think
fun?
they should be.
On like moving around and just jumping around as a dancer all over the fucking map and doing some neat stuff with Reaper, with the teleports around. Sage gets to get some heavy level optimization without having damage on their gap closer stuff and their movement ability. Is cool. It's cool to think about how can I do a faster position and to make my damage and abilities do more damage instead of I have to put this in my rotation. So
Yeah.
In the end, it won't matter at all. Players are just going to hit whatever is on a spreadsheet somewhere and they say to do it. All right, it's the movement, being able to do different kind of super optimization with the movement on the map is fun to me. I would prefer it separated, which they already are doing with Dragoon. Right? They're moving Spine Shatter out just to be a movement only and not a damage ability. So I don't know.
Well, there's the other part of this that could be super interesting, though, that we don't know how it's going to function. Other abilities in the game like this allow you to jump to a target,
Yeah?
which could be a player.
Monks do that,
The ones
yeah?
that don't do damage, like Thunderclap, Icarus, stuff like that.
Mhm.
If you're giving that to a tank, that's actually kind of awesome in a way. Like,
Yeah.
I would take that personally. I lose
Honestly?
the damage thing, and that sucks. But
You know
yeah,
what-
but like, imagine
ahead.
being able to imagine we're doing P12S again, okay?
Yeah.
And you're doing that section where you have to rescue. As a tank, you don't have to do that anymore. I can just jump to my healer. Or I could do something else. Like, the amount of that opens up potential for handling what SE is maybe saying, these more open-ended mechanics in the future that they could be doing in many different ways. Where instead I jump to a party member, do something with them, and that could offer more greed situations from damage or mechanics. I like that a lot. That's
you
a
know
cool
why
thing.
that's a good idea? It's because tanks are usually separated from the party as much as they are normally. And so having them be able to teleport to the party when they need to, in between like phase shifts or whatever else is great. I'd also like it to do a 1-second stun on whoever they're charging.
That just sounds like griefing.
I mean, what else is rescue? So I think it would be great as a side effect. But yeah, no, I can agree with you. I think it would be fun if tanks could actually charge their friends, because it would make sense the most for their kit compared to a lot of other roles having that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And players like movement abilities,
Oh yeah.
like Icarus and stuff. Like they gave that to white mages too, didn't they?
Well, they give
Where
them
they
a dash. They're gonna get
Yeah.
a dash.
They give
right?
them an
Yeah,
on
we
advance,
get a
yeah.
dash, yeah.
Yeah, so players generally like movement abilities just because they are fun, and I think that is a great change then, because if it's not fun, don't add it.
I mean, that's what they should be doing, is making
Yeah.
the experience for players fun. But they said
Mhm.
they are going to be doing that in 8.0, but we're not talking about 8. All right. The fights are going to be fun enough, right? We're going to have dodges just like we did in the Final Fantasy 16 fight, okay? We're going to have a lot of actions that were given to us that are fight-specific. So, we'll focus on that for now. We'll see how they do fight design. Let's hit healers. This is Momo's world, right? You're a healer, right, Momo?
I play all of them, but I think Chile said they played White Mage too.
Chile, you play white mage right
yeah,
now?
I'm a white mage. Yeah, I've
Okay.
been slowly going through Uwu as white mage.
How do you feel about some of the changes coming down the line for healers? I guess white mage is a good way to start too.
I'm excited to see what the presence of mind damage spell is going to be, because currently you just throw out, at least I do, for like glare and dire. So, well, glare, should we say, and I guess holy if there's an AoE. So I'm interested to see, because they add in a new spell to presence of mind when you press it, right?
Yeah, they're going to get 3
probably-
casts in a row. It's an AoE ability, which I'm guessing, I'm hoping it is very good in a solo fighting a raid boss as well, something maybe like Plegma or whatever, but we'll see.
Try and make it like a high damage as a single target, and then damage down over based on how many enemies it hits. So that way it's good for raids, without having to worry about oh great. So yeah, I'm excited to see what changes they do. I would like to see. I know it probably won't be until later, but I would still like to see more uses of the lily at low level, because currently when I do low level content, I get the lilies, the flower things, and then like great, I've got 3 of them. Great. Now great.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of
just-
low-level
I feel-
optimization that's not done, that doesn't feel balanced at all, and there's a huge thing that they need to do with the new player experience, because things do feel kind of goofy for a while as a new player coming in with the jobs and everything else, and so that's a whole nother...
I would love to see misery pushed down to when you actually get the heals, or not long afterwards, rather than having it take forever before you actually get misery.
Yeah.
That's what thing I would like.
I was in a dungeon just the other day, and I had a sage a sage, whoever was hitting Helios over and over and over and over and over and over again. And I said, hey, Helios is an AoE. No response, just kept moving, hitting Helios over and over and over again. It was probably a bot, but it was weird to see that, like, there's some they were all sprouts that were in the party with me. But just some people just don't have any kind of understanding of anything with the job, and they have nothing that's like... A lot of their abilities don't need to be pressed. They just have these things that exist for them, right? They could just hit one heal button over and over and over again, and that you're a great healer in dungeons. So when we get into that and like the whole new player experience and players learning how to play jobs or having fun with new abilities, that's a whole fucking conversation that could take days.
It's actually well,
Some of that.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Some of that is, I would say, because if you're a new player and you look at your tooltips, it'll say something like, press this healing button, 200 potency.
Mhm.
What does that mean? What is 200 potency? You're like, that doesn't mean anything to anybody for the most part.
The other one
unless
says 300 potency, though, right?
It does.
So
which
obviously that
probably
one's
means
better.
that's stronger. But how much is 100 potency? You don't know unless you were to sit down, press a couple buttons a few times, look at the values, and start figuring out the difference.
Yeah.
And when you actually do that on healer, the job starts to click a little bit better for you. Like, of actually when you start, because then you start to understand how much are your buttons worth. How much is this Medica 2 worth, which puts a regen up as well, because then you start figuring that out.
Unless if they knew how surfer ticks worked, they're like...
Yeah, but nobody's gonna know how much that regen is actually worth.
Yeah.
And this helps a little bit. But until SE like makes you do that or changes the way that they describe abilities to people, that type of action where you see people just kind of spam a few buttons as a healer probably isn't going to change for new players. Because they really don't make it easy for them sometimes to actually understand what they are doing and what their buttons do. And that is probably one of the most important things that they SE could do to help a new player.
All right, let's like I'm gonna dive too deep in that, so I'm gonna let Momo say his piece on healers too here.
I mean, for Rymage specifically, it's interesting because I have my hypothesis was that they removed a size and star from Astrologian, and replaced it with the Presence of Mind buff. And I didn't see it until actually today, but I was rewatching the Astro trailer, and that Nebula move at the very end of the trailer does the same animation as star. So that actually kind of reaffirms my belief that they actually just got rid of a size and star and added that damage facet to the 2-minute buff, which is kind of sad, to be honest. So I'm curious how that's going to work.
But everyone wanted more R size. They don't want less R size. How dare they?
Well, the issue with the size is like it's such a weird tool, right? Because like it kind of goes back into the logic of like, oh, why are they removing gap closer potency? It's because like people just press the size, right? No, I'm just saying, but like that's probably if the size was gone, I'd imagine that's the reasoning they use, because like I don't think many people would consider it a healing tool.
I loved it. It is a healing tool, although it also, I don't know if it still does this because we haven't cared in many years. It also gave mana, so it has so many different purposes of, do I want to use it for damage, or do I hold it for the heal and get the party as another off GCD? Or you can just spam it for the damage or on cooldown to get your mana higher, depending on what you're doing. But some of those aspects we haven't cared for a while. The healing part, though, is very... Healing versus damage is like its current use.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's damage for the average player, yeah.
I'd actually say otherwise. For the average player, it should be for the average player, or even myself when I play, I use it for the healing. Because as a healer, if you make a mistake, everyone's dead.
I feel like I'm an average player, and I would say it for healing more than I will for actual damage.
I think most of the time it lines up with healing, anyways. I feel like, at least in like when I think of like top and DSR, I'm like, do I need to actually hold this? And most of the time you don't. I feel
like I'm not gonna hold it forever, but if I feel like it's gonna, like, if I know there's gonna be a big, instant burst of damage coming up, I will hold it for a second or two.
No,
like,
I mean, I
will...
Go ahead.
No,
ahead,
sorry. I was just rambling on there.
Momo?
I was gonna say, yeah, like in UCOP, for example, is a good example where it's like I'll hold it during like Blackfire, right? If I need to, like at the end of Quick March, if like shit's hitting the fan, because like having that instant cast of size when like let's say your co-healer's dead or they have like brink of death or something is like, it's just nice. It's like a good recovery tool, even though it like misses the potency on the boss.
Isn't a size like in the opener though? Like if you go look up an opener, a size is in there, or am I wrong?
I mean, yeah, but at the same time, but
that's like
auto raid wide. What's stopping them? You use it dual purpose.
Yeah, it's a 40-second cooldown. Like it's back up like almost immediately. For, like,
I mean, I think the perception though from players is that it's a damage dealing ability. Once they actually start reading abilities, understanding it, it's something that does damage. And so I don't know. I pressed it on cooldown. I do have that. Like, do I have the heals? The thing is, like, you're kind of forced to do an AoE heal no matter what to burn your lilies too, right? I mean, that's just part of it. And so everyone just gets healed naturally in a lot of stuff with healing. And I feel like your rotation just heals people overall. Because if you want your blood lily or whatever, you need to hit a button that heals somebody. Well, does the tank need a little bit of healing here, or do I just heal everyone? If I don't hit it, then I'm fucked and I lose damage.
Well, that's the thing about... Oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, in general, I think a lot of things are being made automatic. Like, if you want to optimize damage, you're optimizing healing at the same time in a way. And a size kind of fits in that pattern. But it just, if it's convenient enough when it comes up, there's damage going out.
It is kind of boring. It's like, I mean, it's a weird design because like it's same with Star. It's like you play around those two abilities, right? And it's like, I'm curious what like SE thinks of it, because it's like, do they balance for like group coordination or do they balance for like pugs? And like I feel like they balance for like pugs because like maybe they just like they see that as like, oh, they're just pressing on a quill, they're not thinking of like, oh, you know, the coordination aspect of that kind of skill.
I mean, I play healer, and I do it in Party Finder, and I mean I do it in the ultimate static we're doing right now too, but in general, I wouldn't enjoy healing Savage outside of Prog and outside of I guess playing with people who are learning, right? When I'm doing it in a situation to where everybody knows what they're doing, I feel like it's really boring. But Momo, you do it in a situation where everybody knows what they're doing too, so you might have.
It goes both ways. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I pug a lot too.
But yeah, I think I don't know. I'd like it to where healer had a little bit more to where fuck it. I'm not gonna go down that conversation. We're gonna turn it into a whole healer show. Go ahead.
I want more damage.
Yeah,
You want more damage. You want more like? Do you want a 1, 2, 3 instead of your 1, 1?
I would love to 1, 2, 3 as a healer. Give me glare, stone, and a new spell. Then I
mean,
can
it's-
1, 2, 3. I can have a rotation. That'd be great.
I mean, it's crazy. Astro's the skill healer, right? And
Not anymore.
well, I don't know. It still has cards,
Nah.
right?
No,
One's
it's not.
offensive, one's defensive, and one's
It's not. It's not
healing.
gonna be. It's not. The whole issue with Astrologian is like, I mean, this kind of crosses into like the Black Mage Monk stuff too. But it's like Astrologian, Monk, and Black Mage were like the 3 jobs that were considered like quote unquote remaining jobs with like the most skill expression, and like I mean, it's just not right. Like it is what it is. But like one card every 60 seconds. Where like you just hold the 60-second one. Actually, we don't even know how it works yet, right? Like there's speculation that they locked the cards to the same ability, right? So that means like you can't like they're forcing you to like hypothetically like do a damage, support, and then curative thing, which would be fucking awful. I would probably write a very mean written letter to Square Enix headquarters if that was the case. But let's just say hope that's not it, right? But if that was the case, right, that makes it even like worse.
But then it even makes, to be honest, there's that side which is bad. But then also they talk about lessening button bloat by trying to make it so that you have buttons that turn into buttons because they're worried about controllers. And then they do this to Astro where it looks like you get more buttons because right now the one card ability turns into that card and you throw the card. But if you draw all 3 cards, you're going to need 3 buttons for those 3 cards. Otherwise, as you say, you can have that
exactly.
button chain. It's adding 2 more buttons for an effect that already has. It's fine.
Yeah. Well, the issue is like hypothetically, let's just say star is removed, right? So like we don't know. Again, I'm not saying it is or isn't, but I'm just saying I'm pretty sure it scales off the 2-minute buff now. Regardless, so let's just say star is gone, right? So the star, I mean, Sinistry is probably gone too. I really can't imagine that skill being a thing. But like we also like know that draw, play, redraw, like those 3 are being changed extensively, right? So like that's 3 buttons right there that are probably going to incorporate the new skills.
No one uses undraw anyways, right? It's just
You used a macro, didn't you?
No, I don't have that on mine. Minor Arcana is being changed too, right? Like there's all these buttons are being changed to where I don't think we're actually gonna. I mean, I think I looked at it. I don't think we're actually getting any new buttons. If anything, we're losing a button in terms of like what we have right now overall. So it should be fine theoretically. But it's just like when I think of Square Enix, I'm like thinking like, man, are they really gonna add like just one button that you just press every 60 seconds that comes from like your new sleeve draw ability? It's like
you press one button and you get 3 cards, and you press those 3 buttons eventually. And it's just something you have to always press, and you have to use those 3 cards within those 60 seconds, right? And that's just a whole...
I'm just saying it would be very Square Enix for them to lock the play behind one button and just force you to do back to back to back. Which would be like, God, I just hope not.
I agree that I hope that you don't have to like play them in a specific order.
Yeah.
Because when they said like they're giving an offensive, a defensive, and a curative card, we don't know what the healing one's going to be for, and how strong the defensive card is.
Yeah.
I mean, you're probably going to play the offensive and when either if something new is coming up, like we are 2 minutes, or you'll just play it eventually. But having to use that to go into your defensive and healing ability, that just feels so unflexible and just
exactly.
not fun. Like I get the idea of the cards to me are way more fun than current Astro. I hate current Astro personally, though.
I'm gonna be honest. I hated it,
but
but now I kind of love it a bit. Because you're just you got this fidget spinner you're working on the entire time with cards, right? You're just kind of doing this thing off to the side while healing. And it's kind of neat when you start to optimize it and you're like, who do I put the card on? And when does the 60 seconds come up? I need to make sure I put these 2 cards on these 2, I don't know. It feels like
Sindalf is just skill issue. We don't listen to his opinion.
Oh, okay, fair.
come on.
Once I learned the differences in the color of the cards, I kind of found Astro a lot more fun because blue cards go on physical and purple go on ranged. And as soon as I remembered that's a thing, it became a lot more easier.
I mean, let's just go make it clear for everybody real quick. All jobs were perfect the way they were made in 3.0, and players ruined all of the jobs. All right? Square Enix knew what they're doing in 3.0. We were good. We didn't need to change anything. We were good. And then they screwed it all up, right?
They were fun in 3.0, but they were heavily imbalanced.
That's fun.
Something
that's fun.
Imbalance can be very fun. But the thing is that a lot of players, like currently this last expansion has had, in my opinion, some of the best balance they've ever had in this game, especially right out of the gate. Yeah, there are still parts that are not balanced correctly and certain classes need to be buffed. Some maybe need to be like brought back a tiny bit, but it's been better than I would say ever before. Because if you look back in the past, yeah, the kits were cool and they were fun, but you had cases where it's like, at the end of Creator, you never took a caster because caster was just bad. It did not. You're just better taking a machinist. But then you never took a monk because to make that work, you had to take the dragoon and the ninja. Like it was just so much better to take the specific comp than was to play anything else. And you should know that as well because you played paladin.
I know,
which I would even agree.
I played machinist and Creator was paladin.
You were griefing by playing that class.
We all had fun.
You were straight griefing.
It was
You might have had fun with it because it was enjoyable.
The hallway boss Paladin was better. Okay? It was better. The way that block worked, I think it was great. Dude. It's fine. All right.
But we don't have that anymore, and we're probably never going to get that, and that's partly why they make some of these changes that they are making, because they want to prevent those situations from ever happening again. Because it didn't extend just to the high level; it was on also the like common player base level. They would lock classes out of PF, like hard lock.
I mean,
that's still not the future we want.
Go ahead, Chile. Sorry.
Anyone remember when ranged physical didn't have a knockback prevention? So you'd have bards and stuff like that that would get pushed back during the during some fights.
You know what? They should remove it again.
04S.
They should remove knockback from physical. What? They're moving all the time anyways. Why do they need a knockback? They just run in their spot. They don't need to like worry about that crap. Let's bring that back, dude.
Yeah, we got rescued.
Our paladin would actually always use cover on Doomtrain to keep the bard from being knocked back like everyone else.
Yeah, shit, dude. I mean, it'd be fine. It'd be fine. Let's have it to where in 91 plus, the whatever surecast whatever they get, right, anti-knockback loses that and instead gives them a buff of damage of 5%, right? They just get a different kind of roll ability that doesn't do knockback anymore. They could do it in old content, so that doesn't go away. New content, they don't get it anymore, and we're good. This range interesting again.
Finally, a use for cover again.
Going back to the healers talk,
Sure.
I'm actually kind of worried about the Scholar versus Sage, because like they're giving Sage AoE cardio, which a lot of people are like really excited about, and it is cool, but it's like super situational. It's also like just pure healing, which is like we kind of like assumed already, like this expansion, like, oh, you know, Scholar's like the mitigative shield healer, and then like Sage is like more like the pure shield healer in a way, right? But like based off like the job trailer, it seems like they're actually like really focusing on that archetype, because like it doesn't look like Sage got any new mitigation spells, and which is like really awkward because it looks like Scholar actually got new mitigative spells. which is like going to put a weird emphasis on Scholar and Prog because like shields are like generally way more important than, pure healing, especially when you're like you're not opting, right? You're just doing GC heals.
We don't know what Angel Mode does,
heals,
right? Exactly what it does.
We don't know what it does.
The transformation sequence looks like yet, and what it does.
But we do know that it transforms Adlo and Sucker to a new ability, and we also know that it makes ET under Seraphism insta-cast the next spell, or at least that's what we were assuming. Which is interesting as well because like using insta-cast heals is like kind of like the Sage archetype, but it's like they're giving that to Scholar under Seraphism, which is pretty interesting. But we also don't know like the thing about Scholar is like we don't know the potency of like the buff Sucker or buffed Adlo. We also don't know how it interacts with like the current existing toolkit.
Okay.
Go ahead.
We need to. It's very important that SE doesn't go too far in like buffing Scholar in that regard. If they had that sort of thing, where like let's say you go into your winged mode and now you have a very buffed version of Sucker or Adlo that you can deploy or something, because this was a problem in the past and still could be depending on what they decide to do with mechanics, where you could take a Scholar, you could buff the heck out of like one of your abilities at some point, give that to shield to the whole party, and it just makes the mechanics so significantly easier from a healer standpoint that you will never take any other healer to that situation. Because it could make it so much better for the party, or just change certain things. A8S, phase 2 of, or the second intermission, before you go into the final phase of Brute Justice. That was one where you'd like super shield on a warrior with all these buffs, spread the Adlo, and then everybody just kind of ignored all the healing duties because it was so powerful. You never needed the whole group to now care anymore about their positioning in order to heal everybody after like the robot drop.
I mean, you also needed a crit too, right?
Prog. I believe, yeah, but you had time to fish for it. Okay. You could probably get it.
Imagine when people say we're old washed up raiders, when we start talking about A8, that's kind of what they're talking about, Sindalf.
I mean, yeah.
Can I talk about Coil then, and how people used to sit so that they could ignore the mechanics during, what was it? Was it T4? Or was it later? I can't remember. The one with T2, where they would sit and wait just 8 minutes so that the enrage mechanics would happen, so they didn't actually have to do the actual fight mechanics. So you would just sit there, go AFK for like 7 to 8 minutes, so that you didn't have to do mechanics. There we go. I can. If we're going old, I can go.
Yeah,
older.
We can go pretty old. Yeah. All right.
But it's important to learn from those. Is what I'm saying. Is that if they don't, SC probably wants to avoid that situation from happening, where one is just significantly better than the other. Although it's also kind of cool, like Macrocosmos.
But it just I don't know. It's just like, yeah, because like in the current situation, like even without knowing the toolkits, it's just like, unless like the healing demands are really insane, which they probably won't be. It's just like, especially in ultimate progs, like I don't really care about Savage in terms of like Sage versus Scholar, but ultimate progs, like, because like not only are you now getting into like, shields are like you generally have more value in ultimates, but it's also like, do you like Sage now has 2 abilities that only work during full uptime. Like it's because you can't use Numa during downtime, and you can't. Well, I mean, I'm figuring you can't use AoE cardio just based on the nature of the skill, right? So it's just like you're like that now has 2 downsides to downtime mechanics, which is like really awkward. And generally, they don't really add too much healing during downtime mechanics because it goes against the whole philosophy of like, generally downtime mechanics are like mechanic vomit, which means like hard mechanics, and they don't generally add healing checks with those kinds of
well, I mean, limit cut in P12S and both the limit cut in P9S required a little bit of healing, right? I mean, you still had to.
Did it? I think we just shielded and it kind of.
I mean, I don't know. I've seen people die all the time to damage in both of those.
I think it's just a shield thing though, because you don't heal because like you only take damage once in that mechanic.
Well, I mean, P12S in particular, when people are learning and they're staying in a little bit away from the
towers,
wall.
But
yeah, there's a handful of things. Yeah, I mean, it's all skill issue. Guys, Final Fantasy 14 players have skill issue. I don't know what to tell you, but it's not abnormal to deal with skill issue.
I mean, they don't usually do downtime mechanics of Savage though, like that are like a heal check. I mean, I guess you could argue that like P12 limit cut, where you know, there's like a little bit of a heal check there. Again, more of a mitigative one than a heal one, but you know, there's technically Numa and the AoE cardio do not work there as well.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, the AoE cardio, it sounds cool in concept, but it really is just nothing different than like what use it a physis or something without the buff on it. You're just health goes up after a little bit. It's a little bit of a regen. You're doing stuff that you would normally do anyways, which is attack the boss. And people are gaining health. If you hit physis and you attack the boss, it's the same thing as doing AoE cardio and hitting a boss, except for buffs work a little bit differently, and the interaction of how it happens works a little differently. I mean, the potency, if it's really high on the AoE cardio or something crazy, like they give it a buff or something, then it will feel a little bit more powerful.
Oh,
I mean,
shit.
I guess like when you go into like spell speed, you can increase the spell speed a lot, and maybe you can get more healing because you have high spell speed and you're doing a lot of attacks. I don't know.
I meant to bring this up with the Y mage, but I was actually again rewatching the job trailer, and when they did the new ability that scales off temperance or the follow up off temperance, it did the little shield animation on the paladin that was in that trailer. So I'm curious if the follow up adds like extra mitigation of temperance to kind of even it out with Astrologian.
That'd be cool. But yeah, the healers and their kits right now. The problem is that the fights as they make them have to complement the healers in some way. At least is how it feels like to me. Like if you're gonna give more healing abilities, all these other things, at least or something that makes it feel like your class is stronger, a fight should make use of that. And hopefully they do. I don't think that they will outside of a few niche situations because they can't go all the way with that. It would be too hard for a lot of players.
I mean, and we're talking a lot about, you know, job changes and everything, but a lot of this stuff's going to be hopefully shaken up with whatever changes they're making to raids going forward, right? God, I have some real huge copium on like raid design and everything.
Well, I mean, if they actually are removing star and size and all these healing tools, and I mean, technically that is going to make like, I mean, I feel like they have to gut something, right? Like, I mean, they can't just not like add these healing tools and like not remove something. I feel at this point, and it's probably like their solution is just to not remove it but change it into like a new kind of ability.
Well, that's actually interesting because when we were talking about earlier, you know, buttons, and eventually they can't keep adding new things. Like it's not sustainable. You will run out of hotbar space. You'll run out of controller space. All that stuff. They don't want to remove some of these things completely, so they're kind of baking different abilities together to kind of be on the same button. Like, you know, with tanks, they're doing like with Dark Knight, Blood Weapon, and Delirium. They could be doing the same thing with healers, baking a few things together, or just pure upgrades in some ways as a way of getting around this. I feel like we're never really going to lose something, maybe one thing going forward, even especially with the healers as well. I don't think the SC is going to start doing that. Because unless they're going to really change your job completely, which they kind of are with Astro in some ways with the cards, but they do that every expansion. It just wouldn't really work.
Okay, all right. We got like only a handful more minutes, I think, for Momo, right?
Yeah. You guys can
we haven't hit any of the DPS.
go without me.
Yeah. So maybe we'll have a Momo list for a little bit here at the end of the show because he has to go do raid.
I won't be able to yap about Monk, sad.
I mean, you could yap about it right now if you want to do a quick wrap real quick before you leave on Monk.
Nah, it's okay. I mean, a lot of people like they just don't understand, man. Like the reason why people are pissed about Monk is like just because like they're like, oh, you don't know how it's gonna play until like the job comes out. But it's like the people that like Monk like it for optimal drift, which is like not only is it optimal drift, but like there's so many like neat and cool things you can do just because like Twin Snakes timer and demo timer, right? Like you can do an opener where you start with Twin Snakes. You can do one and start with Dragon Kick, right? Like going in the 8.0 or 7.0, that's probably not gonna be a thing. You're probably gonna do like the same GST more or less, depending on like how the job works. We'll have to see. It's like also stuff like, you know, where you would spam potentially Dragon Kick and at the end of a phase and before going into downtime, depending on like how your Lead in Fist buff worked. Like there was just so many, like, again, it was a job that was made for like the people who wanted that like caveat of optimization, they kind of like went to that job, and the reason they're pissed is because that shit's gone, right?
Yeah.
You see so many people like, oh, you know, why are you crying, blah 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 blah, which like is so annoying because like
you
bro,
mad?
it's like
You mad?
yeah, it's like literally one of the only existing jobs currently with like any sense of like skill expression, and it's just like it just fucking robbed from them. Anyways, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
No, that's I think that's a great point because whenever I finally picked up Monk for a little bit, I wouldn't say I'm any good at it because I haven't like really tried too much. That's the thing I noticed, and I was like, yo, this class is sick. I love playing it. Get to actually do dots up when I want to, which they're taking away. If I'm playing in a DSR, there are times like, oh, I don't want to apply the dot. I want to use a GCD instead that will be stronger just because I'm not going to get dot ticks. And then end of a phase hits. Okay, let me dragon kick into six-sided star. And that feels good because that's outside of your normal rotation. And that's just a decision that I have made as a player. And that usually is a very feel-good thing for a player. And them seeming to be against that from SE's side standpoint, I don't really like that.
It's good for like the casual Monk players, right? That like don't really, because I mean it is a lot of like information to like take in.
It's hard, dude.
But it's also hard. Like, dude, when I tell you Monk is like literally like you could play that job so fucking wrong, but still somehow do like amazing damage is like it's like the perfect balance between like, hey, if you want to optimize, here's like a set percentage gain, but then like you could fuck it up and like you would still do like very similar damage. It's hilarious.
The only thing that I'd kind of argue, by the way, I will agree that Monk is probably one of the best melees in the game because of its current state and how it does do that stuff. I hate the fact that there's a dot on the boss that I gotta keep up with and a buff on my hotbar I gotta keep up with. Then if I'm gonna, which one am I gonna press up on next? And you know, you just have to go back and forth with it. But whatever, it's just there's 3 different spots you gotta kind of keep your eyes on and just mentally check on constantly throughout a fight, and it can be a little bit exhausting. But it's really frustrating for players who play it because you always feel like you're failing. For the most part, when your buff falls off or when the dot falls off or something like that, you feel like you failed. So it's a very easy job to feel like there's a sense of failure in it. And so a lot of people don't feel great playing that job because they feel like they can't play it optimally. Although it doesn't matter that much, as has been proven with a couple different things. But I agree, it's sad for the people who really enjoyed playing Monk, and it's sad to take that away, that high-level skill expression away. But I understand how some players may feel they're happy for the changes because they're not going to feel like a failure playing the job. I feel like a failure. Every time I play Monk, I feel like I'm doing horribly. Even if I'm doing good DPS, I feel like I'm fucking up constantly throughout it. But
Probably why they're making some of the changes. Like Monk really it does have some user experience problems, I would say, that they could have probably found another solution for. Like, you know, the whole boot shine thing. Do you actually, it's a tiny buff on your bar when you also have a gauge to look at and a bunch of buttons lining up plus your dot. That's actually kind of a lot to manage. A lot of people say it's a skill issue, which but they could still maybe do something to make it easier for the player to look at it. But also,
it's annoying because it's annoying because they've only really just fixed the buff issue, in my opinion. Because anyone remember how frustrating it was when you had to use Twin Snakes in between your AoE combo because your AoE move in the middle didn't actually refresh Twin Snakes. So you actually had to still single target your AoE. Like you had to do an AoE, single target, AoE, and then you could do your chain for AoE a few times, and then you'd have to do the single target again.
Oh, yeah. For doing AoE, like, it's whole
because the middle
thing.
AoE wouldn't actually give you the buff until recently, which was so frustrating as Monk.
Yeah.
Hey, I do have one more thing about that before you might have to go, Momo. Do you think that these changes that they're making to Monk is because they just could not figure out, or they're trying to prevent Dragon Kick spam?
No, I don't think so. Because Dragon Kick spam, like it's not that great. Like it really isn't that great. I think it's just like
overblow it.
Yeah, I mean, we have the numbers. It's like it's like not that great. But it's like I think the biggest thing is like it's just information overload, right? Because like you have to pay attention to like your lead and fist buff, and then like the demo timer, Twin Snakes timer, your real fire timer. Like it's just a lot of information to digest for like your average player that I just don't think they want that design
Yeah,
forward.
They probably just don't want. Yeah, there's the thing about like old systems and things that we're carrying forward is that they have more flexibility as we understand how the ticks work and how everything else works, and we get really into it, and they remove those thoughts. They remove our ability to be good at something, right? I don't know.
You got like 20 plus classes. I feel like some of them should play like that.
I mean, I'm in the boat. I'm in the boat where it's like I guess as I don't even know if it's elitist or.
Oh yeah, you're an elitist. That's fine.
It's like, I mean, just like it is. Just play a different job. I don't know what to say because like the issue is like where are they going? Like where are these? I mean, I guess we'll see move. Like we don't know what the jobs are like. Like granted, maybe there's another job that these players can gravitate to. That would be nice. Who knows?
Well, I mean, like keep going. Sorry.
The issue is like the monk job currently is like the retirement home for those players who want that skill expression, and now they have nowhere to go. Assumingly, like we don't know, but assumingly they have nowhere to go.
Yeah.
I've known plenty of players who all they want to do is play monk. They're just like, I don't want to play.
Me. I just want to play monk. Monk is like, I mean, that's me, bro. Like monk is crazy.
Momo, where do you go after the retirement home?
I guess the funeral home.
So, you go
6 feet under, brother. See ya.
Oh shit! All right, Momo, if you gotta hop, that's all right. The screen's gonna get weird for a while, and I'll need to fix it, but it's no big deal. I can fix all that crap. But thanks for coming on, Momo. Hope you have a good raid. It was awesome to have you here. We still have lots of DPS to talk about, so people who want to hear about the DPS conversation, hang tight for a second while we manage through all this. But anything else you want to say before you run out, Momo?
Well, thanks for having me. I'll see you for the healer show. Thanks.
I'll see you on the healer show.
Locked him in.
Yeah, peace. See you, dude.
Bye.
All right, let me oh, yeah, it got all wonky, but I can get it fixed. I'm not too worried about it. All right, in general with Melee though, I mean, there's actually a lot to talk about with Melee in general. Dragoon having this change, we're expecting a lot more with Dragoon, right? We're expecting a ton with Dragoon, but it didn't really seem like it was nearly as much. How do you guys feel about that?
I was hoping Momo would carry a lot of the Melee section.
That's fine. That's all right. I can talk about it too. Yeah.
I think from what I've heard, a lot of Dragoon players are a little disappointed, just because they've been hyping up these what are they called? This like Dragoon rework alongside Astro for a long time, and it doesn't seem like they got that.
Yeah,
I'm not really understanding. Like, I don't completely understand what they got because I don't really play a Dragoon. Yeah. But I'm not seeing a rework in here. I'm just seeing they're fixing, although some people might say they might not be fixing the positional. Their like Fang and Claw positional, I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
Some Life of the Dragon stuff.
Because they're putting it together, right? It's going to be one move instead of two different ones. I think that's one of the things they're doing.
Wait, so sorry, you guys talked about Life of the Dragon?
No, the claw, right? I thought they.
Oh no, they're basically getting rid of the fifth one. All right, you know how you usually go back and forth. Instead of doing that, it turns into another buff. It turns into another action that you could use, from my understanding, and it doesn't require a positional. So basically, they're just stopping you from having to do two positionals back to back, and that's it, right?
I think that's the idea behind it.
Yeah,
I think so. Yes.
And I think that's they're changing the Life of the Dragon, so you can do your burst at the beginning. Again, that's when all the big damage comes out. It makes sense that everyone has all their tools at the very beginning of a fight to go ahead and decrease the health of the boss as much as they possibly can before they fuck up everything and everything drifts apart. From my understanding of that, right? So sorry, I'm also doing cameras while doing this too, but Chile, let me just ask you guys real quick, and that way we won't get like really awkward into things that we're like, I don't know if I could really speak on it. Which melees do you feel most confident about talking about right now?
I'll be honest, the main one was Monk because I played Monk for the longest time.
Okay.
Really, apart from that, I haven't really I've leveled them up, but I've not really taken any of the other ones into like in-game content. So really, Monk.
Okay.
So,
That's fair.
Yeah,
Sindalf is a
Monk
too.
as well.
I'm
The
glad
only
we
one I could
started
really that I was kind of like interested to like
Yeah.
really understand a little more was also Ninja. Because
Okay.
Huton, as you mentioned, Hutons always are active.
Mhm.
People are wondering what's Armor Crush gonna do, which I think it gives you those kunais, I think.
Yeah,
or
it gives you the
something like
daggers
that,
is what it looks like.
which I believe does something to your Aeolian Edge.
likely does the damage increase, yeah.
But what I'm really interested about with this is that Poison Mist in the job action trailer. What does that do? Because I've heard some people like, oh, it gives the boss a debuff. But I believe the ninja also gains a buff at the same time. And if it gives the boss a debuff, it's not a dot because you don't see dot ticks on the dummy. What I think this is, because it's an off GCD, is it is Mug and Trick Attack mixed into one. Because
Okay.
that's it, like I mentioned before, and they're doing this with tanks as well, in order to handle like button space and everything without losing some of your abilities or identity. They'll take those two separate things, merge them into one, and then this offers both the my damage is now better as a ninja personally, but now the whole party's is as well. So I think you're going for that at this point. I think that's what they're doing.
Okay.
What that cooldown timer is, that's what I'm curious about then. 60?
Well,
Please?
I mean, it's all 60 or
Please?
60 or 2 minutes, dude. I don't know.
If it's 60, lock that class in. Perma locked in. I'll take it every time. They probably won't, but
yeah,
God,
yeah. I don't know, dude. When we get into like Ninja, the Huton being available all the time, it seems like there's some significant changes going on with Ninja in general that we'll have to refigure out how the rotation is going to work and the openers work and everything else. I mean, you know, Ninja, the hardest part for me was always not fucking up my my lightning procs afterwards, right? Because I'd always hit another ability and it would just disappear because I just wouldn't think about it properly. The other thing that kind of screwed me over with it was just getting bunnied every once in a while. So that was the other problem, right?
Mudra input just feels different, and it's also changed throughout the past couple years. Like I think they've changed how the input actually works on Mudras like 4 times at this point since its inception back in the day. And I'm wondering if they're going to make more, because the ability itself does it feel like, you said, you bunny occasionally. It is just because of the fact that you don't weave it, you kind of just press your buttons. You're incentivized then to press them really quickly. But if you go a little too fast, you're going to double tap and you're going to hit a bunny then.
Right.
It's a very different input method. And I'm wondering, that's not something we'd probably be able to experience until SE adds it in there. Because otherwise, like right now, as a player, you're kind of you're given the agency to go as quick as you can.
Right.
But you get punished for it if you do that. But if you don't, you feel really bad.
Yeah.
You feel like you're not playing your class right.
That's true. That's true. You're not pressing buttons as fast as Yoshida did. Jesus Christ, his button presses were so fast, dude.
I mean, he's on a most likely a local build.
Yeah, I'm
which
sure
probably
it's
has
like
very different
1 MS or whatever.
functions.
Yeah. Jeez, dude. He was going crazy with his finger presses on that, dude. Or does he play with a controller? I can't remember.
He's probably plays with both. I don't know what he plays mainly, but because of his position, he probably plays with both. And I mean, there are players out there that do.
Right.
Think about like what
It kind
people
of looked like he was playing with both in the stream, because I swear I could see the controller layout on the bottom right of the screen with the normal buttons. Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, that would make sense
Keyboard
because
buttons.
I believe it's easier for most people to see, especially in a video, if you're like not using that crossbar stuff that they've had on controllers that like swap between bars. But then they also, because like then everything's there on your screen and you can see it, and it probably easier from a viewer perspective. But if he's still playing on controller, it would make sense.
All right. So we'll see what Ninja does. I mean, there's a lot of questions that we won't have answers to until information from Media Tour and everything else is out there, right? With Samurai, I think the biggest thing that they kind of they showed there was they're going to do the same thing with the locking of some abilities only under their cooldowns. Like, I can't see these names at all. Make KO Tsubame has to be under that, right? And they're kind of forcing you to play in this optimal way, and I think that's the biggest thing with Samurai in general, other than just random upgrades to it. I don't think I saw too much. People were wanting Kaiten back.
Yeah, they didn't bring back Kaiten, it sounds like, which I feel like they could have at least added it as an animation of some kind. And I think some players might have been a little unhappy about that. I mean, I kind of get why they got rid of Kaiten.
Can you do me a favor? My brain doesn't function properly when we talk about old Samurai. What did that ability do?
So if I remember,
Kaiten just buffed. Sorry, Kaiten just buffed the next ability you used afterwards, right?
Yeah,
you used it, and then the next ability had a higher damage.
It was specifically a 50% potency increase.
Okay.
On your next ability, and there's a problem with that. With Samurai and some of its buttons having very high potency, SE is going to see that button, and they're going to say, okay, because you have to press this, you obviously are going to press this under your big buttons, which means that their potency is going to be increased. And this is expected. That's the key word. It's kind of expected that you do that. So we have to balance around its numbers. Now let's say you are a new player to the game, and what's a new player going to do? They're just going to press their buttons randomly. And it's going to affect their next button.
Yeah.
And if you press it under your 1 versus that big button, the amount of potency difference is so big that you're kind of trolling at that point. You're you're pretty much doing really bad damage as a melee player, because just the difference between using it right and using it wrong is so big, and I think that's why they did it.
I'm going to be honest with you, I would disagree, because I don't think the new player would know the difference between doing something right and wrong at all, and it wouldn't affect their opinion, their personality of like what they think Samurai is. They don't give a fuck, right? Everybody learns their job at max level outside of that. And so, like, if you'll understand eventually you put all that stuff under it, they're going to just play horribly because they just play horribly as they're getting in there. But I don't know if Square Enix right now cares about like how the new players press their buttons. They care about how
I think they do.
Do you think so?
Yeah, I think they care a lot. A lot of these changes, I believe, is for newer players coming in, so it's easier for them to acclimate or.
Well, that acclimation doesn't happen until in game, though, right? It doesn't happen while you're leveling up. You kind of like, oh, this is kind of neat, and you try to figure out how to add it in there, but you're never going to be like really optimal until you.
You won't be. Yeah. But when you hit max level, I mean, that's when you should be learning. But sometimes you won't entirely learn. I mean, lots of people play classes without actually learning them. I do it all the time, as well. And you just kind of press what lights up. But you have to understand this piece of knowledge in order for Samurai to actually do good damage. And within their expectations of where Samurai needs to be.
You know what's funny? How I learn jobs, and I don't feel like I'm good at any jobs. I'm garbage. I'm passable. I can press buttons, and I can get a pass through doing the mechanics while playing the job, right? I went through and I played all the jobs. I went through all the Savages with all the jobs. That was a recent thing. Okay, just so I could feel familiar with them. The reason why I learned anything at all about these jobs is because when I played them, whoever played the job was in chat and said, "You're a fucking idiot, please stop doing this," right? And so when I was hitting things out of order, someone would correct me, and eventually my understanding became better because I had people in chat backseating how I played the entire time. Otherwise, I wouldn't really think about that stuff. I actively try to think about it a little bit, but I miss stuff, right? Stuff just gets fucking missed. But
I think that's a fair way to learn a class, to be honest.
Yeah, and luckily with other people could tell me I did something wrong. You know, the other way to do that is just go online and look up guides and stuff and try to make sure you are doing it right there. But it's good to kind of just theorycraft and understand how players who are doing this stuff think. You know, what does it make sense as your gauge? You just need to burn gauge as fast as possible because it's going to jump as soon as you hit your 2 minute or whatever it may be. But when it came to like new players kind of doing this stuff, they're not going to learn even at like in game. I guess there's a point to that they're not going to learn unless if they look it up or if someone tells them they're doing it wrong.
I mean, lots of players aren't going to learn something unless there is a reason to.
Mhm.
They need sometimes a reason to put in the extra effort into learning something, and the game kind of needs a wall.
Yeah,
That's what I think anyway. I think games like this, and maybe a lot of people disagree with this, is that you need some sort of difficulty wall that forces a player to get better and says, okay, hold on, let me take another look at this and
so
start learning all of the ins and outs of my job or certain mechanical things, just something that makes you overcome that challenge.
yeah. I mean, we're going off on a tangent here, but the
Yeah.
the great example I have on that is when we were doing P11S when it first came out. I was doing it in Party Finder over and over again, and then we had a 1 DPS player say to the dancer, "Hey, your fucking tech step is drifting, man. You're not pressing it on cooldown, and that's screwing everyone up." And we're hitting enrage and stuff, and then they start hitting it on cooldown, and we cleared it, right? Because that person said, hey, I noticed something is going wrong. But it's so hard to also know when other players are messing up unless if there's something so obvious like tech step and those group buffs and everything else. Like your general rotation where things you only see, they're not going to know. Unless if they're using tools and stuff that are discouraged to use in the game, right?
Yeah. Feedback is nice if like the game, because the game doesn't provide that to you entirely.
But here,
And I could maybe argue it shouldn't entirely in certain cases. Some it should, but if you give a player a decision that they have to make, maybe it shouldn't, because it will be up to the player to come up with what decision they want to make in a creative way.
Mm.
But if it's just damage, I mean, usually that's pretty straightforward, and maybe the game should.
I mean, when we're going to Samurai, I guess this is a decent example, is they're forcing you to make the right decision. Right? Because they're locking that ability behind your 1 or 2 minute or whatever else, right? And they're doing it with a lot of different jobs. Is they're forcing players to start making right decisions, and that's just a scary path to go down. And I'm very interested to see what Yoshida's thoughts are in the future about these jobs. But again, all this conversation feels almost pointless if they're going to just throw everything away in 8.0, right? I don't know. All right, well, Reaper here is the other one that had a change. It got one extra button at the end of Enshroud, right? But with its like triple Enshroud, that's going to be a little bit more guaranteed now. It's going to have 3 GCDs added to their burst and burn, and they're just going to Enshroud. But Enshroud takes 15 seconds. I think you can't do Enshroud back to back, right? You have to do Enshroud, then you have to do a GCD, then go into Enshroud again, then do another GCD, and then go back into Enshroud, right? Because there's a 15-second cooldown or whatever on it. So if you add that extra GCD, that cooldown, you'll have less time on it at the end of it, I guess. So it is kind of interesting to see where that leads in optimization, but I don't know how big that really is because I only play it, a handful of times. Although it's the easiest. It's the melee that you tell people to go to, right? It's the one that you say, this is the cool looking one. This is the one that has the fun kind of movement set. It's the easiest to execute properly and do the most damage possible with it, right? So
yeah, I don't really know Reaper too much either, unfortunately.
That's okay.
But it ended up being I've heard some players say that I think they were thinking about that a bit and how this might make things a little complicated on the pot now. But I wouldn't have the context entirely for that. And I think this is
fixed.
Pots?
I hate having to press the button like 100 times for it to actually use the pot. Sometimes.
Yoshi P has said that's a skill problem at one point. he actually, I believe there is a interview where he actually says that. I'm pretty sure it's because they have to go to the server to actually recognize that you have the pot to use it, and they have to like decrement that number. So
yeah, they have to
extra
remove it from your
validation.
inventory.
Yeah, I think there's something that has to do with that, and that's partly why they don't.
Then
allow
explain
that.
why Sprint does that too.
I don't know. That one I don't have an answer for.
All right, fair. All right. But maybe because it's with movement. I don't know. But.
Yeah, it did that. Words. Arepa player saying that maybe this makes things a little more difficult under like pot. That does make me think for a moment about all these buttons we're getting under buffs. Because for all these classes, it seems the big thing is you press your buffs, and now you have at least 1 or 2 extra buttons that you're going to be pressing that you weren't pressing before. Something new that you may be going to use at the start or the end of your burst window. But burst can already be kind of tight. How is this going to change how players actually interact with things just because of
burst they're going to be 20 seconds now instead of 15 seconds.
Yeah. Right? I mean, some things were already closer to the 20-second marker, depending on your summoner, but that one's 30. But I'm just wondering how this is going to affect things in terms of how tight your abilities get. Because that's going to affect many classes.
Well, I mean, I think in the end, if you're looking at like we're extending the overall burst phase, but it might not all fit under the buff or whatever. But imagine this, all right? Let's just say you have 30 seconds of burst out there. It's going to get all your hard-hitting abilities will end up under a buff because you're going to probably start it a little early, then have your buffs go out. Maybe, I don't know, if you're doing 3 fucking enshrouds in a row and someone's drifting their buff, your burst is lasting longer than their buff's going to last. So you're going to get the full absorption of their 20 seconds or whatever with your 30, 40 seconds of burst. I don't know. Maybe.
That's interesting though, because this could potentially be where the big skill comes in to this expansion, where if your burst ends up being longer than 20 seconds, when does the party burst actually start, like the buffs themselves? That will be a decision that the party's going to
start at the very beginning because you can't use some abilities.
It might start at the very beginning, but you also have your own personal buffs if you have those. And somehow coordinating this with your rotation and with your pots between the whole group. I mean, it's something you currently do, but does this mean we have to drift things potentially by 10 seconds or 5 seconds in order to start activating everything in an optimal way? That could be interesting. Because there are classes which probably would then want to say, no, I want to press this button immediately because I'm going to get something under like a personal buff ability that give like no mercy, for example. Or then it's like, but wait, how do I make this work with this other class that has to maybe drift something by a tiny bit to make their stuff work? That might be where the skill comes in, communicating between each other, making it all work, which is already a thing, but
the players are already trying to remove as much communication as they can from.
I think we got to bring it back. Got to bring communication back.
We
Talk to your people.
MMOs deserve to have communication and social. When we talk about MMOs, I don't want it to be something that you just log in, queue up, play with random people, don't talk to them, don't give a fuck, and just leave. I want it to be like actually trying to socialize and be a part of a community and stuff like that actually matters in some way. And
I'm lazy. I just can't be bothered typing with a controller. I'm just lazy.
to type and talk? Is that what you said?
Yeah, type and talk.
Yeah, fuck.
No, type with the controller.
Well, that's fine. But if you had people you talk to, your life would be easier. That's just it. That's the MMO. If you communicate with people, your life's easier. You can play the game, but your life is better if you have people you could play with. I mean, and you talk to them, and you'll do more damage. If you communicate, you'll do better. If you add in these extra levels of what an online experience is with playing with other people, and I that's kind of just my philosophy. Maybe I'm just too old, right? I'm too old, and I'm thinking, I wish MMOs still talk to people. I don't know.
But I'm also old.
I played 11, and I remember, you had to time with everyone's weapon skills so that you could get a chain burst. So that then your black mages can do a magic burst on top of your chain burst because they did more damage after you did the two correct weapon skills. So you had to time But yeah, you will communicate to time both your players' DPS weapon skills, or mostly DPS, but sometimes tanks, whatever. Most of the time, DPS weapon skills, so that you would get the correct element, so that the black mage would use the correct damage with the correct burst. And you would communicate that all the time.
Yeah, that's great stuff, man.
My TP, my TP is 100%. Everyone, time
Yeah.
time to raging fists.
Well, that all
I
being
think-
said, though, go ahead. Actually,
I was gonna say, like, a game should function being able to go into a pug. Like, it should still be
Yeah.
doable in a lot of places, but you should be very much rewarded for communicating with the team. And it's usually, like you said, much easier.
better. You have a better experience when you socialize with people.
Yeah,
I think that's
I'm
just-
very much pro. Everybody go get a static and play with them. Don't pug all the time. Like, come pug for fun during your free time, but you
See,
try to
here's the
play
thing.
with people. You'll have a
The-
great time.
To hit this tangent a little bit longer here, all right? People, how they operate with Party Finder is they go in the Party Finder and they're just like, I hope everyone's good. I hope it works out for me, right? And that's literally how most people play. They queue in and they just hope things work out. But in all reality, you could literally go into Party Finder, and if you thought about it for a second, you'd be like, this guy messed up a lot. This guy didn't mess up a lot. Let me ask these guys to join a link shell. Let me ask these guys to get in my friend list. Let me just do some kind of socialization there. And then the next time you go in Party Finder, hey, these guys are online. Yeah, you guys want to do fucking extreme or whatever? Jump in, then I'll start a Party Finder. Then you have 3 consistent people that are in the group with you, and you have a better experience more likely than you would have if you didn't talk to them, right? And so you don't have to have a static. You just have to communicate with people.
You talk about friends list though. Can we have a bigger friends list?
No, that should be
I
fixed
need a-
100%.
We should. And it
Friends
should load
list and
faster, not feel terrible
links
to
shows.
use.
NFCs, all the socialization stuff in the game does need to improve. That's without a doubt. Yeah.
Like, could they even if what they can do is split it so that we can have a friends list that's based on the home server and a friends list based on cross server, and then have 200 for each one. That might help a
just
little
one friend
bit.
list.
But now that we
Just one friend list that houses everybody. That's really big. They don't need to split it up.
No,
I mean,
I'm just thinking if one of their reasons is server limitations, they can't make it more than 200 because of weird server limitations. At least if they can split into 2 separate friend lists, that maybe that will help with the limitation.
Probably not.
it-
If it's
Yeah.
the way I think it's set, it could. But your specific solution might work, but it would have a really bad user experience probably, because the other one, which is for Crossworld, would probably, or like multiple data centers, would probably load very slow. So you still have the same problem. But from a technical standpoint, these improvements they're coming up with, the friends list was probably made with very specific things in mind when they first built the game, and those have not worked well and translated well into the new things they've added over the years. So with them improving it, they're probably going to rewrite how it all works under the hood. Hopefully.
well, I mean, we'll see. I mean, the cloud server stuff is the right direction to take, and to do a more cloud server based stuff for in the different regions, I think is the best way to handle that, right? And so the stuff scales with how many people are playing, and you combine people more regionally. I think would probably be the right direction.
Sort of.
Sindalf, you might know better because you work a lot with IT as well.
Yeah, there's just I'm not going to get into too much detail with that, but it's just that some things that you make are going to scale based off of the hardware that you give the server, or just the fact that you are connected to a server. That is one level of way that they cut things up and split it up. Then there will be your data center, which is going to be another one. And anything that has to reach out to the whole data center is going to be a little slower. And then anything that has to reach out even further to a cross data center on another region is also going to be even slower. But most likely the way this was originally formed was correctly connected to the server, but which your friends list will probably populate, but then it says, oh wait, I have to go out and look at all these other people. Are they online? Where are they at the moment? In a different data center. We have to do all this communication that they didn't think they would have to do before.
I mean, what did
And now it just gets slow.
Blizzard made a whole separate interface for all their friend lists and everything, didn't they? I don't know. I'd have to go back and look at that stuff, but I think they did like a whole separate thing from the server itself and created a whole nother friends list that they might be able to do that.
I don't know. My own experience of World of Warcraft was Shadowlands. That's the only time I ever played it. I tried it, and people tell me that was a bad time.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's all BattleNet. Yeah. It's like kind of like Steam, I guess. Like you're playing a game, but you still have you have like the friends list or whatever. The
Yes.
yeah. So.
Let's bring back Play Online Viewer as an additional friends list. Just to give every Fantasy 11 playing nightmares.
Yeah, I don't think anybody here other than me and you might know what that is, but
All right, let's kill a tangent.
let's not
kill
go
a
down
tangent.
that path
Let's
without
kill a
being a
tangent.
bad time.
We talked a lot about Melee. We had a lot of conversation about before we found this information out on a previous episode last week. So if you guys want to hear more about Melee, you can hear about what the ignorance we had during that conversation before we actually saw this new stuff as well. We still have Fizz range and casters to hit, which we don't have to go into all this like really heavy detail either. But there's some decent notes to talk on all of these. I mean, Fizz ranged. Let's just do this. Sindalf, Chile, where are you at state-wise with experience with Fizz ranged?
I press the buttons that light up on Machinist,
Okay.
and I think it's very fun.
I leveled them.
Okay. All right.
So
Let's hit
we
go
can
ahead.
say a few things though,
Sure.
based off of that.
Mhm.
Like Bard is kind of in this weird spot this entire expansion because everyone's like, "Yo, Dancer, really good," and it is. It's pretty strong. Dancer also synergizing pretty well with the whole. We're gonna have a week delay on the Savage. On Savage, and then suddenly you can buff one player and you can give them like your whole partner thing.
Right.
So it's been pretty dominant this whole expansion.
Mhm.
Bard's been pretty strict, and part of that is something they are fixing here, which I don't know why they didn't do it before. You can actually use a song without attacking an enemy. I've heard a few people be not happy
Spoilers.
about that.
You could do that before they said that you couldn't do that before. Because you used to be able to do that when Bard first... Well, I can't remember if it was when Bard first came out, but Bard used to be able to do spells without targeting an enemy. And they realized that it was supposedly too powerful to play a song. And so they made it so you need an enemy. So it's reverted back to the original change.
We don't know what the reversion completely is. I don't think we had a full explanation if you needed to be in combat or not be in combat, right? And I think even though you don't have to attack an enemy, do you have to be in combat for these abilities to be active and usable? I tried to hyperanalyze the video, and I don't think we could decipher for sure if it required being in combat. Because the trailer showed there already being 80 gauge. So they were obviously already attacking it. We don't know if they stopped attacking it or disengaged from combat or whatever else. So hopefully we get that confirmation soon, but...
I know it sounds stupid, but like I'm going to sound really dumb here, but could we get? I know that we're getting the Cardiga AOE ability where you can. Will Dancer maybe get something like that for the dance partner ability? I know technically they've already got AOEs, but would it be something that Dancer could get as well? Kind of like how, because Cardia is basically healing dance partner.
You mean like it would do the
Bard
damage
would
buff
heal
to
one
everybody?
person? What do you mean?
I'm thinking like the Dancer, like if the Dancer can do like I don't like something to do with this dance partner that can make that an ability AOE. Yeah, an AOE dance partner like the dancing with the kind of like again like you got AOE Cardiga.
Oh, so so hold on, let me make sure I understand. Okay, so Cardia right now works individually, but they're putting an AOE Cardio that can heal everyone. What you're saying is if Dance Partner, instead of just buffing one person, that you could do an AOE and you're dancing with the entire party and all their damage is up.
Yeah.
Okay.
That I don't think will happen ever because that is redundant with Bard. Part of what makes Dancer unique is that it buffs one player versus Bard affects the whole party.
You
I feel like
could
that
say
would...
the same about Cardia.
I mean, you could, yeah. You
Yeah.
absolutely could.
Yeah.
I just don't think I don't think this would end up happening because of that reason. And I usually damage up would be stronger than like stuff like Bard specific abilities that do that change how the damage up works depending on what songs you're getting.
Yeah.
Unless they would have changed how Bard works.
We don't know if we're going to get a new ability between 90 to 100 that would give you something else to do as a group ability. Like, I said, it's completely dumb, and I don't think it'll ever happen. But Us talking about Cardigan just made me want to like
Yeah.
football the idea.
I mean, and it's fair to like say that too, because again, the argument could be that Physis already kind of exists and it heals people up too, and that's an AoE heal. But they're giving it an AoE cardio, which does kind of just another AoE heal in a way. So dance partner, maybe you could do an AoE dance partner. There's probably some kind of effect that you could get. Like, dance partner also gives you like I don't know, certain things, like super feathers or whatever. Fuck, I can't remember what it is. And so if you did it like AoE, then it'd be the same thing like Brotherhood, which gives you a whole bunch of different chakra, right? And you have to burn through it. So I don't know. Oh, and E-Spirit gauge and everything. They're giving you new E-Spirit spender, which really could just be Saber Dance turning into another ability. And then you use that another ability. I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe they give you two abilities to use. One Saber Dance, and then another one would be the new ability they give you after Tech Step. But I don't know. Or Tech Finish. So
Yeah.
it's difficult. All this stuff is actually, it's all speculation right now. They're saying they're adding 2 new abilities to Dancer. Another thing after Flourisher, man, Dancer feels so just like there's just so much crap that you're going through in your burst, right? And you're just trying to squeeze it all and push it in there as fast as you can. I feel like new actions attached to burst things doesn't feel good. I feel like there should be new actions attached to downtime, because downtime feels really boring and like burst feels super stressful and exciting. So I don't know.
I agree with that. Yeah. They should have more of that. I think that would be very nice and interesting change.
Yeah. But it does feel like the way they're pushing it is just adding more to burst. And like, for current fight design is let's throw mechanics that are crazy as shit at when normally 2 minutes would come up. And it just makes, that's your stress point in the fight. One of the best examples is Super Chain 1 and P12S is literally the most stressful thing for most jobs. Not all jobs, but most jobs feel like a lot of stress there trying to execute all those mechanics while doing all your 2 minutes and everything. And so just increasing that, I don't think is the right way to go. I think they really should be bringing this stuff down into our normal rotation outside of the burst. But I don't know. Other thing, machinists, they get more drills now. Sindalf, you're excited about doing a lot of drills? Charges?
The thing I really liked actually about Machinist, personally, that I hope they keep going into it is, I know a lot of people hate Hypercharge, but when I was playing it and I was like, yeah, this feels really good. Like, I get to press buttons. Maybe that's some of the thing I just want to be able to press buttons, and I'm like, oh man, I hit Hypercharge, I get to press all this stuff. This reminds me of a Dark Knight burst window. I'm like, I like it.
I mean, you're pressing buttons, but you're pressing. There's like, you press one button, then the exact same OGCD, another button, then one other OGCD, same button, the same OGCD before. You're just like back and forth.
I kind of like that.
It's not complicated. It's just like it feels fast, right?
The complicated part of the class, at one point, to me, I was like looking at its potencies of its abilities, and I was just kind of like, Machines just has some abilities where their potency is just very high, chainsaw, drill, air anchor, and you can make those crit. And using those correctly for gaining usages or in the right phase, or transferring that damage to a different phase by holding it at the end of another and making those decisions could make or break a phase. And I really like that kind of gameplay. And I'm hoping they keep that. Now, the downside of that is that, maybe that's just because that is a lot of skill expression in terms of planning and everything. But I generally want to see more of that.
Man, wouldn't it feel good if your rotation was different for every fucking fight? Right?
Agree.
And you would have to figure out it wasn't just the same thing every time you went into a fight.
Some differences would be good, but nah, I do not want to try and have to remember everything for every fight every time. No.
Well, it is just you understanding your kit, right?
That's the thing.
Within certain windows and certain ways of how the mechanics work and everything. I mean, the only way we see that right now is with Ultimate, right? And Ultimates kind of have those phases where you just have to kind of like make decisions. And Unreal, technically right now, right? That's the only way they can kind of force some of that stuff. But
here's the thing about that is that, and maybe this is just how a difference in how certain players interact with their jobs and their kits and how they look at it, is you wouldn't remember that because that's hard. Yeah. Memorizing rotations is hard. I don't do it personally. What I think is a good way of approaching your classes is that you look at your buttons, you also ask around for like what is a good opener, and you start to understand why. Why do you press my buttons when I do? What do these buttons do then? And you kind of start reasoning out on the fly, why are you going to press the next button that you're going to press, instead of like trying to remember a rotation. Because there are players out there who actually really try to like remember the rotation. But the only way certain like phase changes or decision making works is if you really understand why you want to press a button, and you can make that on the fly. Then you don't really have as much of a rotation. You kind of come into a priority system, which is a rotation in a way, and you just find a way to apply them to different situations. And personally, that's what I really like about 14 in general, or certain classes, is when you walk into those situations and you can start doing that.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, it's actually interesting to talk about. Like, it's fun to pick up spares sometimes instead of just getting strikes every single time, right? And so you're like, if something goes wrong, how do you fix it? And how do you like repair that kind of stuff? And that's, you know, DPS in Prague. That's kind of fun. But a lot of people just give up.
Yeah.
So
I actually think that's one of the best things you can do as a player to improve is understand, oh, I made a mistake here, something you didn't plan. What do you do to mitigate your losses?
I mean, that's great.
If you actually understand the difference between when you do it right and something you can do to mitigate your losses, that could be much easier. Stuff like Prague becomes way faster because you're then able to make a choice at some point, or a decision that says, oh, I screwed up. It's not the end of the world. Life's not over. We can just keep going smooth sailing. No, we don't wall it and go again. Yeah. Keep pulling.
All right.
I'm hoping Machinist stays. Like, keeps a lot of its identity.
It is. You're just gonna the drill opener stuff. I think is gonna change. And how the tools pace out, you're going to be able to get drill more comfortably aligned with the rest of your tools. Maybe. I don't know. Because it really turns into another 40-second, right? You line it up with air anchor in a way. Like, the beginning, you could put out those 2 drills, and then when you hit air anchor, then you can use another one. But when you hit your 2 minutes, you want 2 charges of drills again. I don't know.
I find it very interesting the job action opened up with Flamethrower.
You know what's... Go ahead.
If I remember correctly, because I don't understand the ins and outs of Flamethrower, but every time I've talked to someone about it, they're like, this doesn't work like normal dots. It has like a different cadence or something. I don't entirely know because I haven't looked into it, but I found that strange that they added that. And I'm wondering, like, they're keeping it. I'm like, okay. Is there anything different about it this time? They kept it. And I think with a similar animation... Did they decouple Bioblaster from Drill? I don't know enough about... I didn't like actually sit down and do the timings on Machinist to know if they did that. But that could be interesting.
Yeah, chat's saying it ticks every second instead of every 3 seconds. So that makes it a little bit, interesting, where you can do a Flamethrower when bosses are coming down, I guess, and get a clip of damage off of them. That's like probably very minor, but it's something to optimize, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, what was I thinking of a second ago? Fuck, I just lost. Oh, the most interesting thing about Machinists in general, with the job trailer and everything, is they had this big Omega crazy damage ability that showed up, and they didn't say shit about it, right? It looked like some...
too?
No, he had like machine guns out on the side, and he there was all kinds of crazy shit happening, big explosions, and it was just glossed over. Like, it was shown visually, but they didn't even talk about it. They didn't mention it. There was nothing that they went into it, but it looked like a crazy ass ability. It's likely your level 100 mode, But yeah, I can't. Your level 100 ability, but I don't. I wish I had more information on that because it looked cool as shit.
That's probably going to be related to some kind of burst that you do, like all the other new stuff they've added.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
I'm really hoping that I'm hoping that we actually just at least get to keep the fun stuff with drill and hypercharge.
I think so. I think we are. All right. The other thing, one last thing, Fizz ranged. They are getting a 15% damage reduction, I think, instead of 10% damage reduction with their mitigations. So that's just another instance of them trying to make, I guess, Fizz ranged be a little bit more supporty. I don't know. They didn't do that for the other DPS jobs, right? They didn't increase their mitigation or anything else, but they're just trying to bring them up a little bit more on the mitigation, which was interesting.
I think they want to make Fizz range and the mitigation part maybe just a little bit more impactful for certain mechanics, because that ability is actually really good. Like being able to have an extra like 10% for the whole party, which is now 15. Very, very powerful. And usually it's one of the last things the party asks. Ask Happy about this. He'll tell you it happens to him all the time. That you're sitting there, everybody dies to something, and the last thing someone's going to ask you, because no one asked you throughout the whole fight until it actually matters, when you're using Troubadour, when you're using Tactician, all that stuff.
Right.
I think it's just they want to make that
when are you
going to
use Dismantle?
Yeah, I'm actually hoping they keep Dismantle. I love that Machinist has that, because if Machinist is good on damage, that's something unique that they bring to the table, and it's just strong.
Yeah. All right. We got one more roll to hit, dude. Casters, and you both are going to tell me you never play casters ever, right?
I enjoy Black Mage occasionally, but
okay.
Yeah, I'm a Lalafell, so of course I do.
Fair. Yeah.
I hate casters.
I love Black Mage.
I generally hate casters. They're not fun to play in this game.
I love Old Summoner. I'm not a big fan of New Summoner.
I would disagree with you, Sindalf, but okay. I mean that's personal opinion. You don't have fun playing casters. Sindalf.
Yeah, I don't have fun playing it.
I don't have a lot of issues with Red Mage. Red Mage is probably the one that I would enjoy playing in Party Finder because you feel like you have the most effect overall in recovery. And no other DPS has any effect at all if the party survives or does better. They can do mitigations and other shit, but they can actually bring people up. But the job itself, maybe... And it's kind of fun to play Red Mage a little bit, but it's way more fun to play Black Mage. It just really is.
Big numbers go blur, okay? I like big numbers appearing.
Big numbers, teleporting to your friends, teleporting to your ley lines, dancing around. Now you can move ley lines around at least once, right? I mean, they're messing with the same thing Monk's kind of getting a little bit, is they're messing a little bit with the old systems and turning it to new systems to where it's spell-based for mana regen instead of server ticks, which some people are going to be upset, but hey, you don't need that little ticker or whatever people are adding on into their game, right?
Yeah, I'm Go on.
Sorry, carry on, Sindalf.
I personally don't like certain things being tied to like a server tick like that. But at the same time, I can't say I understand. I know some Black Mages tell me, wait, that's not how it works anymore. And it has actually not worked for a long time. I don't understand the class entirely. I know that I feel for those players though, because a lot of them really like Black Mage and that it didn't play like a Final Fantasy XIV class. It played like a different game sometimes, and it felt well designed because you could do different things. And now SE's kind of going against that.
All right.
So I'm a little sad about that, to be honest.
I mean, it doesn't
for those players.
It's to like the really deep, like people who dedicate a lot of time to Black Mage and everything else, and because I mean that's again the funnel that you end up at in the end. If you love casters, you end up at Black Mage because that's the one that has the most work that you can put into it to do the most impressive things with damage and movement, and it just feels good to execute some of the stuff that Black Mage does. So losing a little bit of that feels crappy, but to like the average player who just enjoys playing Black Mage, this isn't going to change much. They're going to get an extra gauge where they can do this extra nuke. They have a couple other things to worry about. It looks like possibly your mana font's going to reset like hearts or whatever, or give you hearts back, reset timer, a whole bunch of stuff that mana font's likely going to do now. As a guess, is what we're seeing, but yeah.
By the way, as Dr. just said, it's going to be interesting to see how it works with downtime, because you currently swap to ice to get your MP up during downtime periods. You're not casting anything, you're just running around. It's downtime. You can't hit the boss. So it'd be interesting to see how that works with you now having to cast ice to get mana back.
Well, you're casting whatever the other one. It's like an ice. I was thinking that too, but I mean, whatever you spam currently. I keep forgetting the name of it, but what you spam during the downtime to stay in that phase is a spell you're casting. Umbral Soul, you're casting that over and over. That's giving you mana every time you hit it, likely.
Well, hopefully it gives you mana. So I guess
I mean, it's an ice spell, I guess, so it should. But we'll see. That's another just speculation on it. It's go ahead.
Sorry, it might be a bit of a tangent on Black Mage, but I've wanted something like this for years, and we didn't get it, and I'm sad. I want ley lines to be a party buff.
Hey, maybe Picto's getting that, dude. I don't know.
I don't think Picto's getting that. I've wanted it, but I've been training for this for years. Whenever the Black Mage in my group puts down a circle and I want to stand in it, I want to stand in it so I can attack faster, and I want the whole party in it so they all attack faster. And I think that would be so fun to have that Black Mage put that down, not just as a personal buff, but a party, but it affects everyone's position, so they're all feeling that Black Mage then. That would be so
I was just
good.
thinking, by the way, I was gonna add, imagine if now Black Mage has to use Lucid Dreaming to keep mana up.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Because you don't really need Lucid Dreaming, are you? So now you have to use it.
That would be good. That may add to, because that's still server ticks, so maybe there's some kind of funky play you can do with Lucid Dreaming now, right? Even more so. I don't know. All right.
Also with the casters, I'm
ahead.
really curious where they're going to be from a actual damage standpoint, like their numbers game. So I've had this thought for a while so SE had said, I believe, that Picto is going to get some support abilities of some kind, usually some party utility. To me, this means that if they're also not getting raise, that Picto and Black Mage have to do more damage than Summoner and Red Mage, because they're just offering less support, like from a defensive standpoint, so they need to be more offensive.
All right.
And if that's true, then if that ends up being the case, then who does more, Black Mage or Picto? To me, it means Black Mage does more like your AD DPS type thing, but maybe the ceiling is higher if you were to take something like Picto, because it depends on the whole party playing well.
Yeah.
For like the raid wide thing. I think that's what would happen, but I don't know.
I'm assuming Black Mage will put out more damage, but Picto is going to increase the overall damage of the either as mitigation or as damage in general. Hopefully it could be damage, but then like, why would you never bring a Picto if it's increasing the whole party's damage? But Picto kind of sucks if you're playing with people who suck too, then, right? That's the other part of it. So in your Party Finder standard parties, Picto's not going to be as strong as a Black Mage who will be able to perform well. But if you'd have to be the Black Mage to guarantee you do well, right?
Right, but you also, I see this a lot now as a discussion with the battle res being a thing on Summoner and Red Mage, is that unless that gap is somewhat significant, a lot of people I know have started to go into this thing where they're like, oh, I'm joining a pug. Why is this playing on Black Mage? Why are they griefing?
Oh, yeah.
What are you bringing to the table in your standard like pug when the DPS checks don't matter by taking Black Mage into it, when you could just be playing Summoner, which you will probably do more damage on because it's so much easier, but also because you have raise. That discussion it's kind of like a mean way of putting it, but there is a valid discussion to be had there.
No, it's
where
what idiots
if the
think
black
most of the
mage can
time.
do
I'm
like
gonna let you know.
significantly more.
It's the dumb way of viewing all this stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
people do think about that. You're right. That is something that people consider all the time. Literally none of this crap matters in the current state of the game. We don't know what raids are going to look like, if DPS checks are going to be really tight or if they're not going to be really tight, because if we make DPS checks really tight, then reses don't fucking matter, because as soon as someone dies, it's over, right? But you can't really go in that direction either. You have to make it more forgiving for the people who are doing Party Finder, and so reses are still going to be powerful. And so people are still going to be stupid, and they're going to think that, hey, if I don't have reses, then we're not going to move forward. But in the end, it's all about the players. And I tend to think people who are playing jobs that are more difficult to play, either they're really bad or they're really good. And more often than not, if they're surviving in Party Finder, they can be pretty good. Some people can kind of power through and not get blacklisted, but at this point, when they blacklist you, none of your characters are going to exist to anyone, right? And so blacklists are going to hit you pretty hard, and the amount of Party Finder groups you're going to be able to join. So honestly, people are probably going to be a little bit more worried about being shitty in Party Finder. I don't know, maybe not, but maybe there's enough parties at the beginning that it's not going to matter at all. But I think we'll never get away from people misunderstanding the importance of different things and the importance of just good players in general, and they will just bash their heads into joining Party Finder after Party Finder and not making friends and just hoping to, the RNG works out for them with whoever joins their group, which again is the wrong way to approach it, but that's just the world we live in with gaming, I guess, now. Sorry, I go in this spiel fucking all the time. Summoner, though, gets the neat solar Bahamut, but it's not really changing too much, I think, with it. They get, like, from my understanding, is it's solar Bahamut, Phoenix, Solar Bahamut, regular Bahamut, Solar Bahamut, Phoenix, right? And so it pushes away the benefits of healing for Phoenix a little bit, but otherwise it's about the same. It just looks really cool too. You get an extra action after Searing Light, which seems to be kind of standard now. Big buff to party. Let's give a heavy damage ability right after it, right?
I don't.
There's so many different summons in Final Fantasy. They could have done anything else other than
I agree 100%.
other than Neo Bahamut. It's Neo Bahamut. I don't care. It's not solar. It's not glowing yellow. It's either Blue Eyes White Dragon or Neo Bahamut. It's one or the other.
They could have done so many different summons. Odin would have been a great choice too, because then it's unique in a way that has to charge the boss and be in melee with it. Then it doesn't really matter that much. It doesn't really change things, but it seems different at least, right? Just making another Bahamut? Why? We don't need another Bahamut, guys. We're good. There's so many other things they could choose besides that.
Plus, lore-wise, wouldn't it be... Sorry. Plus, lore-wise, wouldn't it be scary to give us an even stronger Bahamut after we had a Bahamut that nearly killed everyone in the world before? Surely making a stronger one is not the best idea. This Bahamut that nearly wiped the world is not. We want it higher.
Yeah. I don't know why they're so afraid of giving something that's cool to summoners. We've been asking for remove forever. We're never going to see it, right? They could have upgraded all the summons and just gave them different models, and their attacks could have been the same. They'd have different graphics to them or something like that.
Some sort of eggy glamour you're talking. Yeah. Some sort of eggy glamour?
They could have done eggy glamours. Yeah, they said about it. They said that it says what, a Realm Reborn? There's so much. And again, Summoner's probably fine. It's not going to matter at all. But they could have done a lot more flair to it than they have, and I feel kind of bad that Summoners didn't get that. It was a choice. It was literally a choice.
They have.
Well, even 11 has more summons for Summoner than 14 does.
That's because 11 Summoner is fundamentally different in how it functions.
And fun. You're right there. You had the fun word.
Ooh.
Okay.
I don't like Summoner in 11. I don't think it's fun.
Oh, okay.
But Summoner, I think, is just one of those classes where, as of now, I mean, its original purpose, it was a pet job, which was janky, and a dot job, which they're really going away from at this point. And now they are, I would say, they're kind of like a poster child for this game. They're big, they're flashy, They want you to feel like you're stronger when you press the big button and going into a phase. Have you ever done a raid with 7 summoners? Like, and put everything to large, all animations turned on.
Oh no, but
The game is blinding. It's already bad enough with 1, but like you have so many crazy effects going on, and I really feel that's what Square Enix just wants to go for with Summoner. It's not meant to be complicated. It's not meant to be too much more. It's just meant to be. It kind of looks cool to the people who like big flashy things.
Could have looked cooler with a different summon besides Solar Bahamut. All right.
It could have, but is that summon? Because I've heard other people say, "Oh, get this summon." They could have done different ones, but is that summon justifiable as something that says you are level 100 now? You are so much better than you were before than that previous Bahamut you have. If you would have given me
Shiva
Ramu,
go ahead.
That Odin. Shiva Ramu is cool. Odin, yes, I agree. Odin might have been.
Odin would have been good.
But I've heard some people say Shiva Ramu, things like that. Does Shiva and Ramu compare to Bahamut, which currently exists, or Phoenix?
What people were expecting was not more of using Shiva, Leviathan, and these other different summons to replace Bahamut, but more to replace Titan, Ifrit, and Garuda, right? And try to replace those sets as upgrades to what they currently have.
I might be wrong. I'm sorry about this. People are talking about Alexander. But canon-wise, isn't Alexander stronger than Bahamut, if I'm rightly, storyline-wise?
He is time.
Bahamut... No, but Alexander could have... No, from what I've heard, Alexander could have beaten Bahamut to stop the calamity. Well, words are hard at 1 a.m. But it decided to turn itself off because it calculated that the amount of energy it would need to actually stop Bahamut would cause more damage. So technically, Alexander's more powerful. If I remember rightly.
Probably, I don't know. I just think that the Neo or the Solar Bahamut, it's just such an obvious wrong direction. It looks really cool. Don't get me wrong. It looks really cool. But that's the only thing we can really even talk about with Summoner. It's not like a lot of other things to talk about it. But that summon is the identifying thing. Is they could have easily got into adding a 4th summon, and that would mechanically change Summoner some bit and be interesting. They could have done a handful of different things, but just making Bahamut 2.0 doesn't feel like good enough. So that would be the only thing. It doesn't matter. Playstyle, everything, and we're still going to enjoy it, whatever. If I had to complain, it's because they were lazy. That they were lazy in not giving us something that felt a little less redundant.
Would they give a job a little more identity? Maybe there's a potential that could happen where maybe your Garuda, Ifrit, Titan, all that stuff could upgrade eventually into something completely different. That
8.0
that gives you that more identity. Because I can see those turning into the Shiva Ramu, many of the other summons in like Final Fantasy that are a bit more rare and not as iconic, but also have like really interesting things. Like someone in my raid group said, why didn't they give you Ravana? If you Ravana, there's part of your melee combo or something like that. It's going in, slashing the heck out of stuff, and then you go back into something else. Those are options. Those could be cool.
They could have added another summon and just make it a choice on which summons you use. Like had 4, but you can only use 3 within a window, and one of them was an AoE summon, and one was not an AoE summon, and that gives you a little bit more flavor in dungeons or something else. There's I feel like there's so many easy choices to make with making things interesting for Summoner, and they didn't take any of them. That's my only complaint.
This is more of a hit at Square Enix in general. Is as of late they're very risk adverse. They're not really. I think you're right that they could have done something else, but Bahamut's kind of the safe choice. It was a very safe pick for what they did. Like, we're gonna complain about it, but I mean, for a lot of people who are looking from the outside, Bahamut does look kind of cool, and I think that it was a safe pick. And at the end of the day, that's what SE is doing a lot of at the moment. Is that they're making very safe choices as to what they for a lot of these jobs or anything else. Like, there's nothing dramatic that they've done that is like, let's take a risk on this and see what happens.
True.
Or maybe they are. Maybe that's the content coming up.
I mean, that could be the bosses. Yeah, I mean, the bosses are going to be the risk, but we'll
Yeah.
see how much of a risk it really was. Red Mage, more finishers, guys. I don't think there's.
I don't know.
I
I actually hate playing Red Mage. I was like, this is not fun. So I didn't even look at the action trailer past like the first glance.
I mean, I think Red Mage is fun to play. I enjoy kind of going into the melee and back and forth. It doesn't do a lot of casting. I mean, it's still, to me, the button presses feel still enjoyable, almost as enjoyable as most of the rest of the other jobs, right? It's not a caster, which is the biggest complaint. Summoner's not really a caster either. It's another complaint. But Red Mage isn't really that big of a deal. New skills in OGCD. Okay, sorry. It seems like they're adding in another button to press. But it's just what it is, yo. I don't think it's that amazing. Like, it's nothing that's even remotely too much worth talking about in general.
I want to see Red Mage jump more into the melee combo side of things. I think that would be really cool. But 8.0 maybe.
Yeah.
I feel like having a ranged class being forced to go into melee range, one of them, not all of them doing this, just one of them, I think would be a very interesting change from a strategy discussion of like, which one do we take? If one of the casters would potentially be in melee more often, which Red Mage sometimes is, and that does pop up in discussions about the class sometimes, and like, what do we actually want to take a Red Mage into the fight if you have to do this? But if it does significant damage while doing that, I think that would be a very interesting group-wide decision that you would make between statics. It probably would not be great within pugs, though.
Yeah, anytime you have to make a decision and it goes around pugs where you lock people out is horrible. But Red Mage would still be brought in because they could arrest people, so it doesn't matter. Yeah, I don't know. Going through all the jobs, the only ones that really stand out as like really crazy unique was Black Mage and was Monk. And those are the ones that are getting hit with the changes that kind of take away a little bit of the uniqueness to it. It's not all of it there, but a lot of that skill stuff that players really went for were within those two jobs for sure. Shit, dude, guys, we've been talking for over 3 hours. This has been a long-ass show. I was like, we're going to do 2 hours. I believe in us, right?
I saw that. I'm like, there's no way. If we stayed on topic, yes.
Yeah.
If we stayed on topic on
That's
MogTalk,
never
dude?
happening.
Yeah.
On
Imagine that
any
shit.
podcast that ever existed, I'm sorry, not
Yeah.
just MogTalk,
Oh,
any
fair.
podcast that has ever existed,
Yeah.
you're never going to stay on topic, especially with new guests. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the new guests. Yeah. And people who are very passionate about the game and certain topics, those topics will go a little bit longer. For sure. But, we're going to have another show hyper-analyzing a lot of stuff after the media tour's done, I'm sure, about what changes we know for sure after the community analyzes stuff and goes real crazy with it. But, I mean, this is still a decent amount of stuff to talk about. We weren't expecting huge changes. But what we really have to see is, if there's not a lot of changes to these jobs, how these jobs function going to fit in really well with the raid content coming up too, because some of them might start to fall short if the raid content favors a different type of play style. Maybe, I don't know. We're not going to see the results of this for a while. We're just going to be talking about it for a long time, aren't we?
Yeah. Media tour will happen. So many people will become doomer, especially after they try doing math and they're like, my class is bad, oh my god, and then you play it,
Especially
it's
as
good.
You don't even have that much time at the media tour to you've got a little bit of practice, a little bit of content you can try, but if you want to try everything, you're not going to have any time to try everything. So there's going to be people that are not going to be able to work out what they're supposed to do with their jobs.
Here's the thing, dude. As soon as those tooltips come out, the community's going to do all the work. The community will do a lot of work for it.
Just give me them tooltips.
That's all it is. The community will do all the work for you. It doesn't matter as long as those tooltips are out, and they are going to be out there. I know
we're not technically talking about Blue Mage because there's nothing on Blue Mage, but I would love to make a request for Blue Mage for Dawntrail. That I will be really sad if it doesn't happen.
Okay.
As we know, that the carnival has had like previous Final Fantasy characters as boss fights. You know, in the carnival for like the like the carnival
Yeah.
fights you've had like Siegfried. Please, with all the Final Fantasy IX references in Dawntrail, please add Quana as the level 90 carnival fight. That's all I want.
I'm gonna
in
let
the
you
game.
know,
I
Chili.
want
Blue Mage
I
ain't
want that
getting
to be my level
shit.
90 card.
Blue Mage is
I
done.
want that. No, it's getting a level increase.
I made sure it's going to be minimal in
means I want-
comparison because Beastmaster is going to be the focus of the expansion for the
We'll
limited
see how
challenge.
Yeah.
Beastmaster works out.
Yeah.
That's why I just want it as a carnival fight. I'm not talking anything else. I just want it as the
Yeah.
carnival fight.
Yeah. We'll
If-
see. they
I
have
feel
a lot of work to
Beastmaster is
do.
going to become. Well, I forget what it was called. It's like Panther something in 11. They had like these Pokemon fights you could do.
Oh, you're going to be a Pokemon master?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I think
okay.
that's
Yeah,
what they
yeah,
might
but-
try to do with Beastmaster.
That
Yeah,
would
Him
be
in the
fine.
Pokemon
Hey,
fights.
Because you could buy a special camera and then you got film, right? I think it was called Pancration. Was it?
Yeah,
Called
something like
please tell me,
that. And Talker
oh my
or
god, I was
something.
right. Damn it, it was Pancration. You're right.
Mm.
I don't know.
You could go and take photos of them, and you could actually get special Pokemon as well that would like shinies, weren't you? Couldn't you? And you could fight them in the zone in Wings of the Goddess.
Yeah, and the
Not
Urgan
Wings of the
Urgan
Goddess,
area.
Reservoir Ugin.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you
And that
could,
was like
like
an
they
arena
were
you
like
could fight there.
public shows that you could watch. So the whole server would go around as like
Yeah.
yours were going up against someone else, and they would fight. I think they might try to do something similar, but be a little more involved
Yeah.
because like modernize for 14.
We'll see.
But to be fair, I also wanted Besiege to come back in, Stormblood when the Guardians were attacking, and I was hoping like they'd made like a version of Besiege where we had to defend against the
Where's our
Guardians.
Grand
and stuff.
Company summons, guys? Dude, like, what's fucking...
I mean,
There's a lot of...
to be fair, the Grand Company summons did eventually come into the play, right? Like they said, lore-wise, it'd be a bit weird for you to like summon Grand Company, so they added them into Heaven on High, right? That was the reason for adding them into Heaven on High because that was like, this is why they're there.
The Grand... Hold on. They're in the Heaven on High?
Remember, you can do you can get summons in Heaven on High, right?
Oh, yeah, I mean...
No, Grand Company summonings, but I'm like, that's
Yeah.
they stopped doing the idea of Grand Company because lore-wise it was a bit weird, and they added it the featured Heaven High.
Lore-wise is an excuse.
Do summons there.
It's just an excuse.
It is.
Anyways, guys, before we wrap everything up, did we miss anything that you guys were just aching to like just voice out or vent on or anything else before we wrap up the show today? No?
Not really. We went over quite a bit. It's because I
Okay.
also have raid in 20 minutes, but
Okay, all right.
I don't want to keep going too much longer.
That's fair. I mean, most people aren't going to want to watch a 4-hour show anyways, yeah? And we've already did that. Sindalf's pissed off enough people, dude.
They misunderstood.
It was a misunderstanding. It was... Well, when you phrase stuff that way, people are going to come back.
Words. I'm not good with my words, you know? They don't understand what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say something specific. They take it a different way. It's not meant to be that way.
Sometimes when we say stuff, it sounds like we're talking shit, and it's not that big of a deal. I mean, I've had people block me on Twitter for even thinking of the thought a Scion was going to die. So it's okay. It's fine. All right, Chili, anything else?
Nope, I think that's pretty much it that I can think of right now.
All right, so before we wrap up and we'll do your last shout-outs, I do need to do a moment here for someone who has given some level of sponsorship to this show, which is the Gateway Fate guys. If you guys are unfamiliar, I've been pushing it on Twitter for a little bit, retweeting their stuff and everything. It's the St. Louis Fan Fest that is fan-made that's coming up in October by someone who does a lot of cons himself with anime cons and stuff out there. And so if you guys want to check that out, please do it. Look up Google Gateway Fate. We'll put the links here in the description as well. And I should find a link here too. I'll find that before the show ends here. But just to give you a rundown of it, let me throw some of these slides up here. October 12th, October 13th, 2024 is when it's happening. There's people like the voice actor for Tifa, who is going to be there, Britt Barron. So if you guys want to meet her, she'll be over at Gateway Fate there. We'll also have, I believe they're going to have a drag entertainer over there. Orinia Peran? I can't say the name properly. I'm so sorry. I'm going to get hated for that. But they're going to have a lot of cosplay stuff going on over there as well. There's some VIP merch packs out there, Scion Pass, that you can get. I think the admission is fairly cheap, and you can get the special pack here that will give you extra food vouchers and more. So yeah, check it out, guys. They're going to have a handful of really cool people out there. And just fun stuff. So if you're like, you missed FanFest, or you like FanFest, you want to get another taste of it, it's central for the US crowd, I guess, because it's right in the middle in a way. It's a little bit more east, but it's kind of in the middle. And it's I'll probably be there as well. So yeah, check that out. Thank you, Gateway Fate, for your support too. But yeah, with that being said too, our guests, thank you guys for coming on and talking about this for a while. This is a lot of stuff that I wanted to talk about. I've been doing nothing but trying to analyze these jobs and understand these jobs from an ignorant perspective I had before, one-trick ponying and all that great stuff, to where now I feel more confident talking about all these different jobs. So it was interesting to see these changes and how the community is responding to it. I appreciate you guys coming on and helping me with that conversation too. Sindalf, any last words where people can find you? Anything else before you head out?
Yeah, I mean, thanks for having me on. You can find me on, I mean, you have it on the screen right now.
Yeah.
Twitter and Twitch. Might stream tomorrow, debating if I want to or not. Yeah, shout outs to, like, you know, my raid team and everything, all that stuff. Shout outs to Carbingus, big fan. But yeah, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. It's funny, like, dude, we've known each other for so fucking long, at least throughout these MogTalks and everything, and for the world race. Oh, this is a fucking heaven's ward, dude. It's been a long time.
It has
man.
been a while.
Jesus Christ. But yeah, I appreciate you coming on and giving me your thoughts on everything, and good luck with your discourse with the community.
It'll be fine. We'll come to a mutual understanding one day, or not. It is what it is.
It is what it is, man. All right, Billy, thank you so much for coming on too, man. I appreciate you giving me your time. You know, we haven't got you on before. I thought we did. I can't remember where I thought that was, but I do appreciate you agreeing to come on and talk about this stuff with us too.
Thank you for having me on it. It's nice to meet you, Sindalf, for at last.
Likewise.
I've seen you on Twitter a few times, but nice to meet you on here. But yeah, I'm Chile, one half of Moogle Garden Radio. We also do a podcast every second Thursday. I stream Tuesday to Friday. Although I play a lot of Fantasy 14, I also did a playthrough of Fantasy 7 Rebirth. Thank you again to Square Enix for providing the code for that. But I do other games other than Fantasy 14, but Fantasy 14 is our main focus. My co-host streams Saturday, Sunday, Monday. But yeah, we're getting very close to episode 200. We've had Frost on before. Thank you again for joining us in the past, and hope we can have you on again in the future. But yeah, thank you everyone for all the love. Thank you for all the chat in Twitch, and thank you again to Frosty for having me on. Hopefully, I didn't scare you off having me on again.
No, not yet. Not yet. You can do it if you try hard enough, but you haven't tried hard enough yet. But no, it was fun. And thanks Momo, of course, who was here earlier, had to leave for raid. And thank you. I did see the host from Exu. Thank you so much for that raid as well during the show. This was a ton of fun. I'm looking forward to the show we're going to have next week. Look towards my Twitter, Frosty TV stream on Twitter, for more information about what we're gonna do for that Saturday. We don't know exactly yet, but the plan is MogTalk's gonna be having a lot of shows kind of back to back for quite a while, especially with new expansion coming out, and there's a lot of stuff to talk about, especially in June. So, all right, guys, I'm gonna wrap it up. We're gonna do a credits roll here, and then we're going to go straight into a raid to somebody. So stick around for the raid, and yeah, everybody wave and say bye. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Keep saying, Chile, say bye.
Bye. Bye.